Chapter 132. Lung Shichi's group of 4 followed the 2 elders into the blood kill hall. However, the 4 of them were still a bit dumbfounded. They were clearly still in shock at the 2 elders' heaven-defying abilities. When the people in the hall saw the 2 elders enter, they all stood up to welcome them. Hateful Blade and Ink Frost lowered their heads slightly. Bone Devil immediately put away the bone in his hand and respectfully bowed. The others also bowed. Old Blockhead casually waved his hand and condensed his voice into a line to explain the situation. Then he walked to a corner of the hall. After hearing the 2 elders' words, everyone's gaze fell on Lung Shichi. As soon as Lung Shichi entered the hall, he felt waves of gloomy air surge through his body, causing him to shiver. At the same time, several pairs of eyes instantly fell on him. Although they were clearly invisible, they made him feel as if there was a substantial pressure on him. It was as if there was a large stone pressing down on his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. Lung Shichi secretly circulated his spirit energy and felt a bit better. He raised his head and saw the 3 people at the front. He thought to himself, according to the booklet, those 3 should be the Pavilion Master, Hateful Blade, the Vice Pavilion Master, Ink Frost, and the Disciplinary Elder, Bone Devil. As for those people, they should be the Blood Garment Pavilion's top assassins, the Netherworld Blood Garment Assassins. After the 4 of them stood still, Hateful Blade's cold voice rang out. You already know about what happened on Blood Mist Island. From now on, the 4 of you are disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion. Furthermore, the pavilion will use all of its resources to nurture you. Hearing this, Lung Shichi and the others didn't reveal any joy. This was because they had a question in their hearts. Just as Lung Shichi was hesitating about whether or not to ask, Hungming asked, "What do we need to pay?" Hateful Blade's face was covered by a mask, so his expression couldn't be seen. He only said one word, loyalty. Disciple Yushu greets the Pavilion Master. As soon as Hateful Blade finished speaking, Yushu directly knelt on the ground and said loudly, Disciple Hungming greets the Pavilion Master. Hungming quickly followed. Lung Shichi and Delta Origi looked at each other. Very good. In that case, Yushu, you will be my disciple. After Hateful Blade finished speaking, Yushu's body suddenly trembled. He raised his head in surprise. He understood that from now on, he was the direct disciple of the Pavilion Master. With the Pavilion Master's personal guidance and an endless supply of cultivation resources, it was as if he could already see a bright future ahead of him. He raised his head, cupped his fists and said, Disciple pays his respects to Master. Hateful Blade gently waved his hand and did not speak. Yushu obediently retreated to the side and secretly glanced at Lung Shichi and the others. He knew that among the 4, Lung Shichi and Delta Origi were the best, but the Pavilion Master chose him first, which made him feel strange. Delta Origi? This girl is fated to be with me, so she will be my disciple. Bone Demon's hoarse voice sounded. He had decided to take Delta Origi as his disciple. Delta Origi stepped forward and said crisply, Thank you, Master. The last to speak was the Vice Pavilion Master, Ink Frost Ghoul. He first looked at Lung Shichi and then turned to look at Hungming. He seemed to be hesitating. Lung Shichi was also slightly nervous at this time. He was also a little uneasy that Hateful Blade and Bone Demon had given up on him one after another. According to the information he knew, the 3 people with the highest authority in the Blood Garment Pavilion were the 3 above. However, 4 of them had come out. If no one took in 2 disciples, then one of them would not be able to become a disciple of the highest authority. The remaining person would have to become a disciple of one of the underworld Blood Garment Assassins. Although these people were also experts who could intimidate a region, there was still a big gap between them and the 3 above. However, things would always develop in a bad direction. Ink Frost Ghoul chose Hungming in the end. Lung Shichi was the best in the Blood Mist Island's secret realm, but no one showed any interest in him. Lung Shichi sighed in his heart, but his face was still calm. He might have less resources than the other 3 in the future, but he had the system. This mysterious existence made him confident that he would be stronger than them. Then again, he might have more freedom if he became a disciple of one of the underworld Blood Garment Assassins. It was not unacceptable. Thinking of this, Lung Shichi's face became even more calm. Seeing Lung Shichi like this, Old Wood and Old Bone had a trace of admiration in their eyes. At this time, Hateful Blade said to the 6 underworld assassins, You guys come. Whoosh. As soon as Hateful Blade finished speaking, one of them immediately stood up. His mask was a strong green demon. I see that this kid's body is very strong. He's very suitable to walk the path of body cultivation. I'll take him. At this time, the person sitting in the 3rd seat stood up and said, Ridiculous. Green demon, your broken technique made you neither human nor ghost. You still want to harm others? Young man, I'm Leng Yu. You and I are quite fated. Why don't you become my disciple? Leng Yu's mask faintly showed a gloomy expression. Bullshit. At this moment, a deep voice suddenly came from outside the door. Then a slightly plump man rushed into the hall in a hurry. The person instantly appeared in front of Leng Shiqi. He put his hands on his waist like a woman on the street who was about to quarrel. However, when he saw the two old men, he immediately bowed deeply. Old Bone nodded expressionlessly. The person immediately put his hands on his waist again and said to Leng Yu without any politeness, "He's not fated to be your disciple. I want this kid." At this time, Leng Shiqi also saw that there were dozens of faces with different expressions on the mask on the person's face. Upon closer inspection, those faces seemed to be alive. Some of their eyeballs were even moving slightly. It looked very strange and a little creepy. Leng Yu's body suddenly emitted a trace of coldness and said coldly, "Wu Xiang, what do you mean? You don't understand what I mean? Brainless thing." Wu Xiang muttered in a low voice. However, although his voice was low, everyone present could hear it very clearly. Leng Shiqi couldn't see Leng Yu's expression, but he could imagine that Leng Yu's expression was not good at this moment. "Wu Xiang, you dare to be so arrogant in front of the two pavilion elders and pavilion master?" Leng Yu said in a low voice. Wu Xiang waved his hand and said, "Put away your little thoughts. In the blood clothing pavilion, strength is respected. I'm stronger than you, so this kid will be my disciple. If you're not convinced, the two of us can go out and fight." Leng Yu seemed to choke. After a while, she squeezed out a sentence from between her teeth. You only dare to be arrogant a little when Hua Luiwei isn't here." Wu Xiang laughed. "Haha, you're using Hua Luiwei to pressure me. You should understand that as long as the two of us are here, you'll never be able to be arrogant." Enough. Leng Yu opened her mouth to say something, but Pavilion Master Hen Dao spoke first. Wu Xiang and Leng Yu immediately closed their mouths and returned to their seats. Wu Xiang casually sat in the first seat. The others also didn't say anything. "This kid will be Wu Xiang's disciple. Disperse," ordered Hen Dao. Leng Shiqi muttered inside, "This Wu Xiang doesn't seem very reliable." But before he could recover, one of his arms was suddenly grabbed, and then the scene in front of him rapidly flew away. He had been directly dragged out of the Bloodkill Hall by Wu Xiang and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chapter 133. After a while, Leng Shiqi was dragged by Wu Xiang to a place called Wu Xiang Palace. Leng Shiqi did not have time to observe the blood clothing pavilion and was dragged along in a daze. Wu Xiang did not slow down after entering the palace. Along the way he encountered several people in gray who respectfully called out, "Lord Wu Xiang," and looked at Leng Shiqi strangely. In the end, Wu Xiang directly dragged Leng Shiqi into a hall before putting him down. Leng Shiqi finally breathed a sigh of relief. His whole body was sore, especially his arms, which were almost numb. Wu Xiang put down Leng Shiqi and muttered to himself, "Fortunately, I came back in time. Otherwise, all the good seedlings would have been taken away. This boy is the last one left. He must have the worst aptitude. Alas, I was still one step too late." Leng Shiqi's eyes twitched a few times. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. You can just think this in your heart. You don't have to say it out loud. "Hey, by the way, what's your name again?" Wu Xiang suddenly asked. Leng Shiqi was speechless. "Disciple Leng Shiqi." Wu Xiang said, "Leng Shiqi? The name is not very good, but it doesn't matter. Maybe it will be changed soon. Since you can come out of the Blood Fog Island, you must be extraordinary. Come, let me take a closer look." After saying this, Leng Shiqi immediately felt a deep gaze penetrating his body. It made him shiver as if his secret had been seen through. Interesting. You're not simple, kid." Wu Xiang suddenly stood up and walked around Leng Shiqi a few times. Finally he leaned close to Leng Shiqi and whispered. Leng Shiqi's heart tightened when he heard this. He was really afraid that Wu Xiang would see through his secret. At this moment, the sound of light footsteps came from outside. Wu Xiang returned to his seat and pretended to be righteous. Leng Shiqi turned his head and saw a petite woman walk in. This woman was also dressed in red, and the sleeves and collar of her red dress were embroidered with black patterns. She was also wearing a mask on her face, and on it was a drawing of a soaring Qing Yuan. After the woman came in, she subconsciously glanced at Leng Shiqi, and then respectfully said to Wu Xiang, "Master." When Leng Shiqi heard this, his heart skipped a beat. This woman was actually his senior sister. Wu Xiang nodded. Suwan, this is your junior martial brother, Leng Shiqi. In a few days, you will be in charge of guiding him in his cultivation. Suwan turned to look at Leng Shiqi. She didn't seem too willing. At this moment, even though Leng Shiqi couldn't see Suwan's face, he could clearly feel the disdain in her eyes. Master, this disciple is currently trying to break through the bottleneck of the spirit aperture realm. I'm afraid I don't have time to take care of junior martial brother. Suwan said with a bit of difficulty. Wuxiang said, you have to understand your master. Master has also been trying to break through the bottleneck. I really don't have time to guide Leng Shiqi. When she heard this, Suwan's body trembled. She said in shock, Master, you've already touched upon the bottleneck? Wuxiang said in a low voice, correct. This disciple congratulates Master. I've only found the right path. Who knows when I'll be able to break through. Don't worry. Since you're guiding Leng Shiqi, I'll give you a 4-star mission. I won't treat you unfairly. Thank you, Master. Suwan finally agreed. Wuxiang waved his hand. Alright, take him away first. Yes. Leng Shiqi, who was listening from the side, was confused. He could hardly understand what they were talking about. He only knew that he seemed to be despised by these two people. In the end, he could only ask to be excused and leave with Suwan. Right after he left, Wuxiang's voice suddenly appeared in his mind. Disciple, Master forgot to tell you. Your background is a top secret of the Blood Garment Pavilion. You absolutely cannot reveal it to anyone. If anyone asks, just say that I picked you up from the outside. When Leng Shiqi heard this, he helplessly nodded, indicating that he understood. At the same time, he felt that this cheap master of his was even more unreliable. After the two of them left, Suwan said, Leng Shiqi, is it? Yes, senior sister Su. Leng Shiqi replied. I'll take you to formally enter the sect first. Watch more and ask less, understand? Junior martial brother understands. Also, my surname isn't Su. At this moment, Leng Shiqi felt a bit of a headache. He felt that since leaving Blood Mist Island, the people he met didn't seem to be easy to get along with. But there was nothing he could do. He could only obediently follow Suwan. Because they were walking normally this time, Leng Shiqi met quite a few people. He was also in the mood to observe his surroundings. The Blood Garment Pavilion was located in a huge valley. The entire building leaned towards darkness. Along the way, everyone he saw was wearing a mask. Moreover, they were all in a hurry. Even if they bumped into someone, they wouldn't give you a second glance. Leng Shiqi was the only one with his face exposed. This made him have the urge to cover his face. According to the booklet Elder Bone gave him, the disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion had a strict hierarchy. First were the people wearing gray clothes. Their clothes looked very cheap and their masks only covered half of their faces. These people were the lowest level servant disciples. They were all in the pure spirit realm. Next were the people wearing black clothes. They all wore black masks that revealed their mouths and eyes. However, the masks didn't have any patterns. After a servant disciple broke through to the spirit transformation realm and successfully completed an assassination mission, they would be promoted to a black-clothed assassin. From Leng Shiqi's point of view, the black-clothed assassin was equivalent to an outer disciple of an ordinary sect. They weren't valued very much. However, the number of black-clothed assassins was also the highest. This was because the next realm would block most of them outside the door. That was the 4 realms of heaven and man. The 4 realms of heaven and man were Spirit Pulse Realm, Spirit Aperture Realm, Spirit Astral Realm, and Unity of Heaven and Man. The Spirit Pulse Realm was the next realm after the Spirit Transformation Realm. However, most spirit cultivators would be stuck in this realm and wouldn't be able to cross it in their lifetime. The so-called 4 realms of heaven and man meant to break away from the body of a mortal and become an innate body. In fact, whether it was the Spirit Gathering Realm, Pure Spirit Realm, or Spirit Transformation Realm, they were all just building a foundation and accumulating a foundation. Even if a person's aptitude was poor, if they diligently cultivated for a few decades, they could still cultivate to the peak of the Spirit Transformation Realm. However, to break through to the Spirit Pulse Realm, which was above the Spirit Transformation Realm, one must have extraordinary talent. In the Blood Robe Pavilion, only spirit cultivators of the Spirit Pulse Realm had the qualifications to become Blood Robe Assassins and become inner disciples of the Blood Robe Pavilion. In the outside world, spirit cultivators of the Spirit Pulse Realm could barely be called experts. However, in the Blood Robe Pavilion, they were only the lowest level of Blood Robe Assassins. This was the foundation of a peak power. The clothes and masks of the Blood Robe Assassins were clearly very exquisite. Moreover, each person's mask had different patterns. Only the color of the patterns on the cuffs and collars were different. Those embroidered with black patterns were at the spirit pulse realm, those with silver patterns were at the spirit aperture realm, and those with gold patterns were at the spirit astral realm. The most frightening people in the Blood Robe Pavilion were the 9 Netherworld Blood Robe Assassins. They were all experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. Lung Shichi's chief master, Wuxia, was one of the 9 Netherworld Blood Robe Assassins. Lung Shichi observed as he walked, matching these people with the information in his mind. Not long after, he followed Sulwan into a large hall. Under her lead, Lung Shichi quickly entered the register and received his identity token, 2 sets of black clothes, a black mask and a monthly salary. From this moment on, he officially became a Blood Robe Pavilion assassin. Chapter 134. As a black-clothed assassin, Lung Shichi's monthly salary was 5 spirit stones and 2 spirit transformation pills. The spirit transformation pill was a pill that could help spirit cultivators in the spirit transformation realm increase their cultivation. It was very expensive and he was very satisfied with it, but 5 spirit stones was too stingy. One had to know that he used spirit stones like they were rocks on Blood Mist Island. Even now, he still had over 100 spirit stones in his system space. However, there was an advantage to becoming a black-clothed assassin, and that was that he could obtain a rank 3 spirit skill. However, the spiritual skills weren't stored here. As a result, he took the token and followed Sulwan to the Blood Book Hall where the spiritual skills were stored. The masked Lung Shichi stood in front of the 4-story Blood Book Hall. He was a bit excited. He thought that after entering he would have the opportunity to use his unlimited skill points to cultivate countless spirit skills. His strength would instantly increase. Sulwan said, "You can only enter this place if you have the token. I'll wait for you here. It's best if you hurry." Lung Shichi nodded and walked into the Blood Book Hall. The door of the Blood Book Hall flashed with a red light. When Lung Shichi walked in, he took the token in his hand. In an instant, the token emitted the same light and enveloped him. Lung Shichi walked in. After entering the Blood Book Hall, Lung Shichi saw more than 10 rows of bookshelves. There was a dazzling array of spirit skills on them. Of course, this was only the first floor of the Blood Book Hall. There were only rank 1 to rank 3 spirit skills. There was also a jade platform next to Lung Shichi. There was a person standing behind the jade platform. He was wearing a similar black patterned blood robe as Sulwan. "You have a quarter of an hour. Once you've made your choice, report to me." The man said coldly, then turned around and ignored Lung Shichi. Lung Shichi subconsciously wanted to touch his nose, but his hand touched the mask. He could only bitterly smile and walk in. Lung Shichi was very clear about which spiritual technique to choose. The reason why he was able to survive on Blood Fog Island and escape danger time and time again was because of his confusion footwork and ghost parade. These 2 movement techniques were extremely important. However, at his current level, those 2 level 1 movement techniques were gradually unable to keep up with him. In the blood-colored pagoda, the demon monkey on the first floor was already much faster than him. Yen Feilin's body movement spiritual technique was also of a higher level than his. Now that he had come out, he would have to face even greater dangers in this world. Body movement spiritual skills were a must. Therefore, Lung Shichi's goal was very clear. He wanted to choose a movement technique. The Blood Book Palace had clearly marked out the various spirit techniques, but he didn't look for movement techniques right away. Instead, he picked up the blue sky saber technique that was beside him. After a few breaths, Lung Shichi frowned. There was no system notification in front of him. When Lung Shichi picked up the blue sky saber technique, he was surprised to find that there were only 2 pages of content. There was only a simple introduction to the saber technique. In other words, what was displayed here was only an introduction to the technique. Reality was indeed cruel. It immediately shattered Lung Shichi's hope. He sighed faintly. He could only accept it. Then he shook his head and collected his thoughts. He walked to the body movement spiritual skills section. Body movement spiritual skills could be said to be the type of spirit technique that was extremely difficult to cultivate and rare. However, there were more than 100 body movement spiritual techniques in this place. This showed how deep the Blood Robe Pavilion's foundation was. Lung Shichi knew that the spirit technique he wanted to choose was a movement technique that could replace the confusion footwork. Only this type of spirit technique could continue to be integrated into lustful eyes, and it was best to choose a spirit technique that had characteristics similar to the confusion footwork. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Lung Shichi went through layers upon layers of selection and selected a level 3 movement technique, Spirit Steps Fluttering. This spirit technique was very similar to the confusion footwork, and the core of it was to control the body. It was just that this spirit technique was very difficult to cultivate, but Leng Shiqi could naturally ignore this. Then Leng Shiqi handed the introduction of the floating feather steps to the person behind the jade platform. The person looked at Leng Shiqi with a bit of surprise. He then pressed his hand on the jade platform. Suddenly the jade platform flashed with spirit light. Names quickly flashed through the spirit light. After 3 or 4 breaths of time, the light suddenly disappeared and a book appeared on the jade platform. It was floating spirit steps. Leng Shiqi was inwardly shocked that there was such a miraculous method. The person said, "This is a rubbing. There are restrictions on it. It will self-destruct in 3 days. It is strictly forbidden to copy it or spread it. Otherwise 10,000 deaths will be unforgivable." Leng Shiqi nodded heavily. He took the spirit technique and left the Blood Book Palace. When Sulwan saw him come out, she turned and left without saying anything. Leng Shiqi quickly followed. Leng Shiqi gradually realized that the Blood Robe Pavilion was different from the sect he remembered. No matter what they did here, they moved at an extremely fast pace. If they could speak less nonsense, they wouldn't speak more nonsense. Everything they did was done quickly and cleanly. He was quite fond of this. Sulwan brought him back to Formless Palace and arranged a small courtyard for him. She also arranged for a male and female servant disciple to stay in. In the end she said, "I'll come find you tomorrow at noon." Then she simply left. The small courtyard wasn't very big, but it had everything he needed. Zhe. Jin. "Greetings, my lord." At this time, the 2 servant disciples dressed in gray called out in unison. Originally, they only called the black-clothed assassins senior brother and senior sister. However, they knew that the person in front of them was one of the 9 Blood Robe Pavilion Underworld Blood Robe Assassins, Formless Disciple. They naturally had to call him my lord. This was the difference in status. Leng Shiqi didn't argue. He said, "You can all go about your own business." Zhe turned and went to take care of the courtyard. Ajin asked, "What time does my lord eat? What flavor does my lord like?" Leng Shiqi muttered. This word sounded very strange to him. He then said, "It doesn't matter. Just send me some food at normal meal times." This servant understands. Ajin bowed and retreated. Leng Shiqi walked into the largest room in the courtyard. The inside of the room wasn't small. In the middle was a living room. On the 2 sides were a study and a bedroom. What made Leng Shiqi feel a little surprised was that there was a cultivation room inside. There seemed to be something like a formation in the cultivation room. The spiritual energy inside was clearly much denser than outside. Leng Shiqi originally didn't have much desire for material things. He was very satisfied with having a room like this. He casually walked around and finally sat down on a chair in the study. Because there were many books about this world in the study, Leng Shiqi couldn't wait to start flipping through the pages, and he was completely immersed in it. A world of boundless waves, of heroes standing side by side, and of all kinds of splendid scenes unfolded. Chapter 135. Leng Shiqi flipped through all kinds of books and scrolls in his study for an entire night. Due to his strong spiritual power, he had a photographic memory. Therefore he could read 10 lines at a glance. He only stopped when Ajin brought him breakfast the next morning. Leng Shiqi stretched his back. Even though his body was not weak, sitting here for an entire night made him feel sore all over. After an entire night of cramming, he finally had a basic understanding of this world. This world was a world where spirit cultivators were prevalent. The spirit cultivator lineage had been passed down for over 100,000 years, and the spirit cultivation system was almost perfect. The continent he was in was called the Falling Star Continent. The continent was vast and boundless, and there were many dynasties and spirit cultivator sections. It could be said that it was a place where heroes existed side by side. There was a world sect ranking in the continent, which listed the strongest forces in the Falling Star Continent. They were 3 great dynasties, 4 saint spirit regions, 5 extreme sects, 6 path demonic regions, 7 absolutes under heaven, 8 desolate weapon path, 9 great gangs, and 10 Fang aristocratic families. The Blood Cloak Pavilion was one of the top forces in the 7 absolutes under heaven for their assassination techniques. The assassins of the Blood Cloak Pavilion might not be very strong in a head-on battle, but their extremely mysterious assassination techniques made people tremble in fear. Especially the 9 Netherworld Blood Cloak assassins under their command. Each of them was a famous expert who had assassinated one expert after another, causing people's expressions to change when they talked about them. The Blood Cloak Pavilion was located in one of the three great dynasties, Wuxia County, one of the 36 counties of the Thunderfire dynasty. The Thunderfire dynasty ruled over 36 counties. According to Leng Shiqi's understanding, the area of the Thunderfire dynasty alone was comparable to the country of Wuxia in his previous life. However, there were many spirit cultivator sects in the 36 counties, especially those first-rate and peak forces. They could be said to have occupied a mountain and called themselves kings. They did not put the people of the dynasty in their eyes at all. For example, the Blood Cloak Pavilion. In Wuxia County, the Blood Cloak Pavilion's power far surpassed the Thunderfire dynasty. Sometimes, the words of the Blood Cloak Pavilion were even more effective than the imperial edict of the dynasty. Other than that, Leng Shiqi also learned about some rare beasts, heavenly treasures, myths and legends, as well as the distribution of the spirit cultivator sects in the Thunderblaze dynasty. Leng Shiqi finished his simple breakfast and couldn't help but smack his lips a few times. It had been almost 2 years since he had eaten real food. Then, he entered the cultivation room and sat down cross-legged, closing his eyes to rest. Although it had only been a little more than a day since he entered the blood-colored tower, he had experienced a lot of things and received a lot of information. He really needed to rest. 4 hours later, when it was close to noon, Leng Shiqi walked out of the cultivation room. He took a light step forward. His body looked a little slow, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the door. This was a rank 3 movement technique, floating spirit steps. Great perfection stage floating spirit steps. Leng Shiqi pushed open the door and saw that the small courtyard today was clearly much more orderly than yesterday. Moreover, there were more colorful flowers and plants in the surroundings. Not only were they pleasing to the eye, but they also had a fragrance that made people feel relaxed and happy. Aze and Ajin, who were taking care of the small courtyard, saw Leng Shiqi come out and bowed. "Greetings, Lord." Leng Shiqi nodded casually and the two went back to their own business. Not long after, Sulwan arrived as promised. Without saying a word, she brought Leng Shiqi to the back mountain of Formless Palace. There was a large and beautiful flower garden here. The two walked to the center of the garden before stopping. In the center was an open space with a radius of several tens of feet. The ground was paved with bluestone and there were some deep grooves carved into it. Leng Shiqi didn't know why Sulwan brought him here. It couldn't be that she was here to enjoy the scenery, right? Sure enough, Sulwan lightly clapped her hands and the bluestone under her feet slowly moved, revealing a dark underground cave. Unexpectedly, a person with disheveled hair and messy clothes walked out. Leng Shiqi saw no less than several dozen wounds on his body, but that person's eyes were staring at him like a hungry wolf. His cultivation seemed to be at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. Sulwan said, "Lang Chi, kill him and you can live. Moreover, you can take his place as the assassin in black." Lang Chi's eyes faintly glowed with a green light. In the next instant, his hands turned into claws and grabbed at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi didn't expect Sulwan to do this, but he didn't panic. He skillfully used his confusion footwork and took a step forward. However, Leng Shiqi underestimated Lone Wolf's speed. Lone Wolf suddenly sped up when he was halfway there. Even though Leng Shiqi used his confusion footwork, his clothes were still torn apart. Hiss. Leng Shiqi was startled. He raised his index and middle fingers and 2 invisible sword chi shot out. He didn't have a sword in his hand, so he used his fingers as a sword. 2 rays of unblocking meridian sword chi shot out silently, but Lang Chi also sensed it. He twisted his body at an extremely strange angle and barely dodged one of them. However, one of the rays of unblocking meridian sword chi pierced his skin and entered his back. The sword chi entered his body and sealed off 2 of his meridians. Even so, Lang Chi's expression didn't change. Wisps of black smoke came out of his index finger and he stabbed out. At this moment, a layer of black smoke appeared under Leng Shiqi's feet. His speed was clearly faster than before. At the same time, his hands turned into pitch-black ghost claws. His right index finger continuously emitted spiritual energy as he pointed forward. When this finger was pointed out, it vaguely contained the power to move mountains. This was a rank 2 spiritual skill mountain-crushing finger. The mountain destroyer finger collided with Lang Chi's fingertip. The spirit light from the spirit finger easily destroyed Lang Chi's black silk and directly pierced a bloody hole in his palm. However, Leng Shiqi felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, in the next moment, Lang Chi reached out and grabbed Leng Shiqi's wrist. At the same time, he pulled out a dagger from his waist and fiercely stabbed forward. Not only that, but the black smoke that was destroyed by Leng Shiqi was now attached to the dagger. Lung Shiqi didn't panic in the face of danger. He raised his leg and suddenly kicked out 10 times like the wind. Each kick accurately hit Lang Chi's waist and sent him flying. Rank 2 spiritual skill wind-catching kick. Seeing that Lang Chi was sent flying, Lung Shiqi didn't want to let him go. He slightly moved his body and activated the floating steps. His movement seemed slow but was actually very fast. Before Lang Chi could react, Lung Shiqi sent out 6 more palm strikes, each of which carried a blazing aura. Rank 2 spiritual skill 6 yang palms. Lang Chi felt the blazing aura around him and twisted his body again. He dodged most of the palms but 2 of them still landed on his body. He let out a muffled groan. The dagger in his hand flew out and the black smoke quickly formed a black net. However, Lung Shiqi lowered his body and a gray cloud appeared around him. The black net instantly shattered the gray cloud, but Lung Shiqi was nowhere to be seen. Lang Chi immediately felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly turned around, but a dagger had already pierced his heart. Rank 2 spiritual skill mysterious cloud thrust. Perhaps Sulwan wanted to use Lang Chi to test Lung Shiqi's strength, but Lung Shiqi used him as a tool to hone his spiritual skills. With Lung Shiqi's peak spiritual skills, he was currently invincible among those of the same rank. Furthermore, he was only using spiritual skills that he rarely used and was hiding his true strength. After Lang Chi fell to the ground, the bluestone tiles on the ground began to move again. A black mouth appeared and swallowed Lang Chi's corpse. Immediately after, a series of cracking sounds came from the ground. Not long after, a stream of blood flowed out and flowed along the grooves on the ground. Lung Shiqi looked at the flowers and felt that they were even more beautiful. Chapter 136. Clap clap clap, Sulwan lightly clapped her hands and said, "To be able to catch Master's attention, Junior Lung is truly extraordinary." Now Sulwan finally called him Junior Brother. Lung Shiqi knew that Sulwan recognized his strength and said, "Senior Sister Sulwan is too kind." In reality, Lung Shiqi was a bit glad that he chose the rank 3 movement skill floating steps yesterday. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of effort to defeat Lang Chi with just the confusing steps. Take this cultivation technique and cultivate it. If there's anything you don't understand, you can come find me in Qingwan Courtyard. Sulwan handed over an exquisite secret manual and turned to leave, leaving him here. Lung Shiqi didn't mind. He lowered his head and saw the words Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts written on the manual. Seeing these words, Lung Shiqi trembled. He knew that this was the core cultivation technique of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Only Blood Cloak assassins had the qualifications to cultivate this rank 7 cultivation technique. Currently, Lung Shiqi's most powerful cultivation technique, Demonic Beast Technique, was only at rank 3, but Sulwan directly gave him a rank 7 cultivation technique. This made Lung Shiqi both surprised and happy. But after he opened the secret manual and glanced at it, he realized that the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts in his hand only had the first 3 layers. But even with only 3 layers, it was comparable to a rank 4 cultivation technique. It was enough for him to cultivate to the Spirit Aperture realm. After returning to his courtyard, Lung Shiqi locked himself in a cultivation room to study the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts. First of all, this cultivation technique had 7 layers. It was said that the 7th layer was the core of this cultivation technique. And this Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts had 2 characteristics. One was that it could greatly mobilize the body's blood and qi, allowing it to erupt with great power for a short period of time. But this would naturally cause a loss of blood and qi. Lung Shiqi muttered to himself, "This is a bit similar to the blood explosion pill I swallowed before." The other characteristic of this cultivation technique was that it could control the body's killing intent for its own use. Baleful qi was an invisible substance that was naturally formed after killing too many people. It was hidden in the body of a person. If there wasn't much killing intent, it wouldn't have much effect. But some people's killing intent had become second nature and condensed a large amount of killing intent. In the end, they could even be devoured by the killing intent and become a blind killing madman. Then, in the end, he could only be eradicated by the various spirit cultivator sects, and at the same time he could also gain a wave of reputation. On the other hand, the Blood Cloak Pavilion was the strongest assassin sect in the Thunderblaze dynasty, perhaps even the entire continent. Every single one of its disciples was covered in blood, so they definitely possessed a lot of baleful aura. The Blood Cloak assassins, the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiendish Arts to use killing intent. Ants Bloods killing blood, as the Bloods blood. As Chi. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment. He had killed quite a number of people and demonic beasts on the Blood Fog Island. Therefore he reckoned that he should also have some killing intent. Unfortunately, these two characteristics could only be fully displayed at the Spirit Pulse realm. Lung Shiqi then used the system to directly cultivate the Blood Slaughter 7 fiendish arts and then changed it to his main cultivation technique. A day later, Lung Shiqi let out a mouthful of turbid air. At this moment, his cultivation had reached the limit of the 5th level of the Spirit Transformation realm. He could break through the bottleneck of the 6th level at any time, but he was not in a hurry to break through. He then walked out of the cultivation room to find something to eat. Unexpectedly, there was a slightly fat person sitting in the living room. Disciple greets Master. Disciple didn't welcome Master. Lung Shiqi quickly bowed. The person who came was Lung Shiqi's chief, Master Wuxiang. Wuxiang said indifferently, "It's fine. Master just arrived and knew you were at a critical moment in your cultivation, so I didn't call you. Many thanks for Master's understanding. Oh, your senior sister came to find me yesterday. She has a very high opinion of you and directly gave you the Blood Slaughter 7 fiendish arts. However, this cultivation method is very difficult to learn. I was afraid you wouldn't understand, so I came to take a look. I didn't expect you to be able to use it so freely. You are worthy of being one of the winners of the Blood Fog Island competition." Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Wuxiang had come yesterday. Didn't that mean he had made his master wait here for a day and a night? However, from Wuxiang's tone, he didn't seem to blame him. Instead, he seemed to admire him. At this point, Lung Shiqi's impression of Wuxiang had changed a bit. He wanted to say a few more words of praise, but Wuxiang continued, "Master came here for another matter." "Please tell me, Master." "Yes, I've been thinking about it for the past 2 days. I've decided to send you to the next pavilion to gain some experience." Wuxiang turned to look at Lung Shiqi as if to see his reaction. Pavilion? Lung Shiqi knew that although the Blood Cloak Pavilion had the title of the strongest assassin force, not to mention the entire continent, just the Thunderblaze dynasty was vast. The Blood Cloak Pavilion headquarters naturally couldn't cover such a large area, so the Blood Cloak Pavilion had branches in some counties. However, the resources and treatment of the branches were naturally not as abundant as the main pavilion, so many disciples of the branches were fighting to get into the main pavilion, but he was going to be sent to a branch. Wasn't this equivalent to being sent away? However, Lung Shiqi didn't feel anything special. Instead, he felt that it was beneficial to him. Although he had only stayed in the main pavilion for 2 days, he always felt a sense of restraint. Moreover, he was carrying a lot of secrets. If he stayed for too long, he might be discovered by those big shots. If he was sent to a branch, he would be able to stretch his hands and feet. Therefore, his mentality and expression were very natural as he said, "I'll follow Master's orders." All of this fell into Wuxiang's eyes. He saw that Lung Shiqi was calm and didn't seem to have any grudges in his heart, so his evaluation of him increased by 2 points. Therefore he said, "Very good. Then you can pack up. Tomorrow I will send someone to send you to the Donglin County branch. Remember, Master also has requirements for you. You must break through to the 4 realms of celestial being and be promoted to a Blood Cloak assassin within a year. If you can do it, Master will give you a great opportunity. If you can't do it, you can be a little assassin for the rest of your life." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi thought to himself, he really has other intentions for this arrangement. However, it is somewhat difficult to break through to the spiritual pulse realm of the 4 realms of celestial being within a year. Moreover, it seems that the promotion of a Blood Cloak assassin requires not only the cultivation of the spiritual pulse realm, but also a lot of sect contributions. This mission seems to be not dangerous, but it is actually very difficult. However, Lung Shiqi still said solemnly, "Disciple understands. And Master is very satisfied with your temperament. This is Master's gift for you to become my disciple. Let's meet again in a year." Wuxiang threw a small bag the size of a palm and left. Lung Shiqi picked up the small bag and looked slightly surprised. Chapter 137. Donglin County was located in the easternmost part of the Thunderfire dynasty. It was one of the counties near the sea. Because this county was located in the coastal area, it established trade with many overseas spirit cultivator forces. It could obtain a huge amount of precious resources that could not be produced on the mainland. Therefore, Donglin County could be said to be abnormally prosperous. However, more than half of this prosperity was controlled by the major forces in Donglin County. On the contrary, the Thunderfire dynasty did not gain much. This was because there was a top force in Donglin County, the Mountain Sea Sect. The Mountain Sea Sect, one of the 9 great sects in the world. The Mountain Sea Sect had a deep relationship with overseas spirit cultivators. They controlled almost half of the overseas trade routes. Not only were they strong but they were also rich. With this local snake, even the strong Thunderfire dynasty could not reach in. Therefore, the deterrence of the Thunderfire dynasty in Donglin County was far inferior to that of the Mountain Sea Sect. This was also the place where the dynasty and the spirit cultivators sects formed. Near a small remote city in Donglin County, there was a small mountain called the Wind Ridge. Because passers-by often heard the faint sound of ghostly cries coming from inside, and there were even rumors that there were evil spirits here. Gradually this place became desolate. Moreover, this small mountain did not have a spirit vein, and the spirit energy was very thin. No spirit cultivator would come here, so the Wind Ridge became a deserted place. However, today 2 men in black, one tall and one short, came here. The tall man was a young man in his 20s. At this time he said, "Junior Brother Lung, this is the Donglin County branch. Senior Brother Fan, there are few people here. It is indeed a good place." The short youth added. These 2 people were Lung Shichi and Fan Jingchu, who had rushed over from the Blood Clothing Pavilion's main pavilion. Fan Jingchu was originally a disciple of the Donglin County branch. This time he went to the main pavilion to run errands, but was directly captured by Wu Xiang to lead the way for Lung Shichi. It had been 7 or 8 days since the 2 of them set off from the main pavilion. They had been riding on spirit horses all the way until they finally arrived here. Originally, Lung Shichi had planned to see the local customs of this world, but in the end he only ate a nose full of dust. Fan Jingchu continued, "There is a maze here. Junior Brother Lung, you must follow me closely later." Lung Shichi nodded. Understood. After that, Lung Shichi followed Fan Jingchu through many twists and turns, and after 2 incense sticks worth of time, they entered a huge space. Lung Shichi looked around and was shocked to find that he was inside the mountain. In other words, the Blood Garment Pavilion had hollowed out this small mountain. The entire space was oval-shaped and had 3 floors from bottom to top. Each floor had many rooms and halls. There were many people coming and going, but most of them were assassins in black. They also saw Lung Shichi and Fan Jingchu, but most of them just glanced at them and didn't pay much attention. Some of the more observant people looked at the small pouch on his waist. Fan Jingchu said, "Let's go. I'll take you to the Grand Pavilion leader first." Guiju, the Grand Pavilion leader of the Blood Garment Pavilion branch in Donglin County, was an old man more than 100 years old. He was once a master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. It was said that decades ago, Guiju was also one of the 9 nether Blood Garment assassins of the Blood Garment Pavilion. But later he was seriously injured in a mission and fell to the realm of Gang Spirit realm. Since then he took the initiative to leave the General Pavilion and came to Donglin County to take care of the branch. "Greetings, Grand Pavilion leader." Lung Shichi and Fan Jingchu saluted together. Guiju raised his arm and a gentle force helped the 2 of them up. His voice was very soft but clearly entered their ears. "Fan Jingchu, you've worked hard this time. Go and get 2 more spirit transformation pills." Fan Jingchu's face lit up and he left. Seeing this, Lung Shichi knew that Guiju must have something to say to him. Guiju's eyes stayed on Lung Shichi for a long time, which made his back numb. After a while he said, "Wu Xiang has told me your identity." Lung Shichi was shocked. He remembered that Wu Xiang had said that his identity was top secret and could not be disclosed to anyone. Why did Wu Xiang tell others? Don't be surprised. I participated in the opening of the secret realm of the Blood Mist Island. Guiju's words left a thunder in Lung Shichi's heart again. He continued, "This is the reason why Wu Xiang sent you to me. Only those who know your secret will protect it. But I won't take care of you. From tomorrow on, you'll take tasks and get used to the pace of the Blood Garment Pavilion as soon as possible." "I understand. I've arranged a room for you. Go and have a rest. I'll take my leave." Lung Shichi put away all his thoughts and left. Returning to his own stone room, Lung Shichi first took a look around. The stone room wasn't big but it had everything that he needed. Unfortunately, there was no cultivation room like the main pavilion, so the spirit energy was much weaker. However, he did not complain. Instead, he sat cross-legged and touched the small bag at his waist with his right hand. Then, a few dry rations and a bag of water suddenly appeared in his hand. After all, these things were not taken out from the system space but from the small bag. The small bag was given to him by Wu Xiang before he left. It was a mustard seed bag. This mustard seed bag had a space the size of a small house, and there were some things stored inside. For example, spirit stones, pills, daily necessities and even some gold and silver. However, the value of these things added together was not as valuable as the mustard seed bag. From what he knew, the mustard seed bag could be said to be a priceless treasure. Only people with high status were qualified to have it. Leng Shiqi liked the mustard seed bag very much. This way, some ordinary things could be stored in it. The truly important things were stored in the system space. However, he did not dare to use the mustard seed bag in front of others. He still understood the principle that a man's wealth was his own ruin. Although his cultivation and strength were considered top-notch among his peers in this world, he was still a weakling who had not reached the celestial realm. The next day, Leng Shiqi came to the central square. This was the place to accept missions, and it was also a place with a lot of people. There were several large boards erected in the middle of the plaza, displaying a large number of missions according to their difficulty. Leng Shiqi walked to a board in the corner. As a black-clothed assassin, he was only qualified to accept 1-star and 2-star missions. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed slightly as he carefully scanned the missions one by one. The targets of these missions were all below the celestial realm. Most of them were targets of the spirit transformation realm, and a few of the pure spirit realm or ordinary people were people with high status. Leng Shiqi planned to take a 2-star mission to practice, preferably one that was not far away and had high contribution points. The contribution points of the Blood Cloak Pavilion were called blood drops. Blood drops were very useful. Not only could they be used to exchange for various cultivation resources and information, but they could also be used to buy higher-level stone rooms. For example, the stone rooms on the second floor had spirit-gathering formations, and the spirit chi in them far exceeded that of ordinary stone rooms. In the future, when he was promoted to a blood-clothed assassin, he would need as many as 1,000 blood drops. In addition to some gold, silver, and spirit stones, the highest reward for a 2-star mission was about 50 to 60 blood drops. Therefore, from now on, Leng Shiqi had to start saving up some blood drops. After looking around, Leng Shiqi tore off one of the missions, which immediately attracted the attention of others. Chapter 138. The mission Leng Shiqi accepted was to assassinate Bao Pengyi, the leader of the Three Swords Gang in Shangyang City of Donglin County. The reason he accepted this mission was because it was very close. Shangyang City was a small city next to the Yin Wind Ridge and was only a few dozen kilometers away. The target was Bao Pengyi, who was at the 8th level of the spirit transformation realm. Although Leng Shiqi was only at the 5th level of the spirit transformation realm, he still had some confidence. The Three Swords Gang was not a spirit cultivation sect, but a street gang in Shangyang City. Although Bao Pengyi was the leader, he was still a rogue cultivator with no one to guide him. Whether it was cultivation methods or spirit techniques, he was far inferior to a disciple of a spirit cultivation sect. Especially someone like Leng Shiqi, who had several cultivation methods and a lot of spirit techniques at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. In terms of spirit force foundation and combat strength, he was no worse than a rogue cultivator at the 8th level of the spirit transformation realm. Moreover, the reward for this mission was good. There were all kinds of spirit stones and pills as well as 50 blood drops, so Leng Shiqi thought this mission was very suitable for him. When he tore off the mission, he suddenly felt dozens of gazes fall on him. Leng Shiqi turned around and those people also withdrew their gazes, which made him feel a bit strange. Then he gently shook his head and prepared to do the mission. After Leng Shiqi left, the dozens of people there immediately began to whisper. "Who is this person? His figure looks very unfamiliar. I know he came with Fan Jingchu yesterday and went to see the head pavilion leader." "Oh? The head pavilion leader saw him? It seems that this person's identity is not simple. I think he might be from the main pavilion. So he was sent down. I'm afraid he did something wrong in the main pavilion. No wonder he accepted Bao Pengyi's mission. He's young and ignorant. This mission's reward is so good, but no one has accepted it for so long. He actually dared to accept it. It seems that he never inquired about that bastard Bao Pengyi. I'm afraid he's going to suffer. Who cares about him?" Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't know that people were talking about him behind his back. After accepting the mission and registering, he set off for Shangyang City with his spirit sword on his back and a scimitar at his waist. He ran as fast as he could and bought a horse from a small town along the way. By the time he reached Shangyang City, it was already night and the city gates were already closed. Leng Shiqi had no choice but to use Gaia Hand to sneak into the city. Unfortunately, he lost his horse not long after he bought it. After entering the city, he walked on the empty streets and picked up a map. Following the map, he arrived at a coffin shop. Dong dong dong, Leng Shiqi knocked on the door according to a strange pattern. Not long after, someone cursed from inside, "Why are you knocking in the dark? Are you in a hurry to buy yourself a coffin?" The door opened a crack, revealing a head with black and white hair and a mustache. Leng Shiqi didn't say anything. He took out his token and put it away. The person looked around and immediately led Leng Shiqi in. Mao Kai greets the black-clothed envoy. The person bowed. Leng Shiqi looked at the person. The person was short and his eyes were narrowed into slits. He looked like a money grubber. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s, but his back was hunched. He was even shorter than the 13-year-old Leng Shiqi. This person was the informant of the blood-clothed pavilion in Shangyang City. Anyone who carried out a mission near Shangyang City could ask him for some information. Of course it was paid. When you accepted the mission, there would only be some superficial information in the mission. For example, Leng Shiqi's mission was to assassinate Bao Pingyi of the Three Swords Association. However, there was no information on how powerful the Three Swords Association was, how many guards Bao Pingyi had, or what he was good at. If Leng Shiqi wanted to successfully complete the mission, he had to collect enough information, so he found Mao Kai. He said straightforwardly, "I need information on the Three Swords Association and Bao Pingyi. Envoy, please wait a moment. I will be back soon." Mao Kai said sleepily and then turned into another room. In less than 15 minutes, Mao Kai came out with several scrolls of information. He picked up one of them and said, "This information records the general information of the small gangs in Shangyang City, including the Three Swords Association. Envoy, this is your first time here. I will give you this information with both hands." Leng Shiqi looked at Mao Kai with interest and said, "Okay, I will accept this. You can name the rest." "Haha, listen to me. This was all the information about the Three Swords gang's leaders, including their residences, cultivation levels, cultivation methods, and spirit techniques. It only cost 1 spirit stone. This is detailed information on Bao Pingyi. It costs 2 spirit stones." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi frowned. The price of this information was beyond his imagination. He originally thought that he could buy the information with money, but he didn't expect it to cost spirit stones. If he bought these 2 scrolls of information, he would have to spend 3 spirit stones. However, as an assassin in black, his monthly salary was only 5 spirit stones. If he calculated it this way, the assassins in black would have to pay for these 2 missions. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes and emitted cold air. This was true cold air coming from Leng Shiqi's feet. In an instant, the temperature in the room plummeted. Mao Kai couldn't help but shiver and said, "Envoy, why are you doing this?" "If you know the answer. Do you think I am young and ignorant? I think that the spy in Shangyang City can do a good job even if it was someone else," Leng Shiqi said coldly. His right hand gripped the handle of the scimitar at his waist and slowly pulled out the blade. "Envoy, please spare me. Envoy, please spare me." Mao Kai felt Leng Shiqi's killing intent and immediately knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Leng Shiqi pulled out even more of his scimitar. "No, no, no. I will give all the information to you for free." "How can that be?" Leng Shiqi let go of the scimitar handle and withdrew his cold air. "You are in this business. How can I take your things for free? Just tell me how much you should sell them for. I won't give you a penny less." Mao Kai wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said, "Envoy, just give me 300 taels of silver for these 2 scrolls of information." "Really? So cheap?" Leng Shiqi knew that in this world, a single spirit stone was worth 1,000 taels of gold. Mao Kai had asked for 3 spirit stones earlier, and now he only asked for 300 taels of silver. This was equivalent to reducing the price by 100 times. It was clear that Mao Kai was asking for too much. "I won't lie to you anymore. I'll trust you this time. I'll take these 2 scrolls of information." Leng Shiqi took out 300 taels of silver notes from his pocket. These were the notes that Wu Xiang prepared for him in his mustard seed bag. "This." Mao Kai's eyes lit up when he saw the notes. However, he glanced at Leng Shiqi from time to time and seemed to be hesitant. Leng Shiqi handed over the notes and said, "This is what you deserve. Take it." "Oh, thank you, Envoy, thank you, Envoy." Mao Kai happily took the notes. When he saw that Leng Shiqi was about to leave, he hurriedly said, "Esteemed Envoy, I have another service here. I wonder if esteemed Envoy is interested?" Leng Shiqi stopped and said, "Let's hear it." Envoy should be going to deal with Bao Pingyi. I grew up in Shangyang City and know the city like the back of my hand. This lowly one can specially design a perfect retreat plan for the esteemed envoy. But this Mao Kai said as he rubbed his thumb and index finger. His meaning was obvious. However, Leng Shiqi directly refused and pushed the door open. Mao Kai's face instantly darkened. He muttered to himself, "Where did this brat come from? Why is he acting all high and mighty? At least he was chopped to death by the people of the Three Swords Association." As he spoke, he looked at the notes in his hand and a smile appeared on his face. He can sell that piece of information for 300 taels of silver. Ah, he's still too young. Chapter 139. After leaving the coffin shop, Leng Shiqi turned into a small alley, then quietly sneaked into the ground and opened up a small space. The reason why he rejected Mao Kai's suggestion was because Mao Kai's mention of the word terrain had reminded him of something. The system map. Ever since the system upgrade unlocked the map function, he had not used it because the map was useless on Blood Fog Island. Only now did he suddenly remember this matter. Leng Shiqi opened the system map, and a circular light screen appeared in front of him. It was basically pitch black, and there was only a thin curved white line at the bottom right corner. He stretched out his hand and drew a few times, and the map was magnified several times. At this time the white line became a route. Leng Shiqi took a closer look. Wasn't this the route he took from the General Pavilion to the Yin Wind Ridge in Donglin County, and then to Shangyang City? It also showed some of the geographical features near the route. He enlarged the map again and pulled it to Shangyang City. He saw that everywhere he went in the city, the nearby terrain was clearly displayed. This map is a little interesting. Looks like I'll have to spend more time studying it in the future, Leng Shiqi muttered to himself. Next, he picked up the few pieces of information he had obtained and carefully read them. The current Shangyang city was controlled by the City Lord's Mansion, Chinko Hall, and the Three Swords Gang. Chinko Hall and the Three Swords Gang were just small street gangs. They were not considered spirit cultivation sects at all. Even so, they had thousands of gang members. The Thunderblaze dynasty's influence in Donglin County was not strong. The City Lord's Mansion only had a few hundred city guards, and the quality of the guards was uneven. Therefore, these two gangs did not put the City Lord's Mansion in their eyes. However, the City Lord's Mansion was a power of the dynasty after all, so they did not dare to go too far. Chinko Hall and the Three Swords Gang occupied the east and west sides of the city respectively. The Three Swords Gang was able to suppress Chinko Hall because not long ago, the Three Swords Gang had climbed up to the third-rate Heavenly Cloud building. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi felt that this mission was not that simple. He originally thought that it was just to assassinate the leader of a small gang, but he did not expect it to involve a spirit cultivation sect. The difference between a spirit cultivator sect and a small gang like the Three Blades Society was like the difference between heaven and earth. Even the weakest third-rate sect was founded by a spirit aperture realm expert. However, the leader of the Three-Blade Gang, Bao Pingyi, was only at the late stage of the spirit transformation realm. Most of his subordinates were just hooligans. Leng Shiqi really couldn't imagine how Bao Pingyi could get involved with a proper spirit cultivation sect like the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion. Leng Shiqi continued to read, but the more he read, the deeper his frown became. The Three-Blade Gang had 7 leaders under Bao Pingyi. They were all at the spirit transformation realm and each of them guarded a street. Bao Pingyi, on the other hand, had always been a cautious person who cherished his life very much. He had always holed himself up in his own mansion and rarely went out. He still had over 100 guards in his mansion, all of them spirit cultivators. Every day they would take turns to patrol, and it could be said that not even a fly could enter. In addition, no matter where Bao Pingyi went, there would be 4 spirit transformation realm guards protecting him. They were called the 4 spirit guards, and they would even accompany Bao Pingyi when he was eating or sleeping. These 4 spirit transformation realm cultivators were specially sent by the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion to protect Bao Pingyi. What is so special about this Bao Pingyi that the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion would send 4 spirit transformation realm cultivators to protect him? Leng Shiqi felt that this mission was a bit tricky. Ignoring the guards, Bao Pingyi was too cautious, and there was no way to assassinate him. Even if he used the Hand of the Earth to quietly approach Bao Pingyi, he would still have to face the 4 spirit transformation realm cultivators. Once a fight broke out, it would definitely attract more guards. Leng Shiqi didn't think that he had the strength to take the head of an enemy general from an army of 10,000. While it's dark, I should go check out the area around the Bao Mansion. Then he moved towards the location indicated in the intelligence report. Not long after, Leng Shiqi arrived near the Bao Mansion. Immediately, the veins in his eyes bulged and his eyes turned green. Byakugan open. As soon as the Byakugan opened, the world in Leng Shiqi's eyes turned gray. Everyone in the Bao mansion was within his sight. The Byakugan was an eye technique with extremely strong detection abilities. It was very suitable for Leng Shiqi's identity as an assassin. In Leng Shiqi's eyes, he quickly found 5 huge sources of spirit energy. They must be Bao Pingyi and his 4 guards. Just as the intelligence report said, these 5 people were indeed standing closely together. Moreover, there were hundreds of spirit cultivators walking back and forth in the Bao mansion. There were almost no blind spots. It would be difficult for an ordinary assassin to even enter the Bao mansion. Then Leng Shiqi used the breath-concealing technique to restrain his aura. His body sank into the ground. Not long after, he arrived at the bottom of the room where Bao Pingyi was, waiting for an opportunity. However, after waiting for a while, the 5 people above didn't move at all. Just as Leng Shiqi was hesitating whether or not he should try to assassinate Bao Pingyi first. In his eyes, suddenly 2 auras that were not weaker than his quickly walked over. Then the sound of conversation came from above. Leng Shiqi quickly suppressed the killing intent in his heart and listened carefully. President. Big brother. 4th brother, 7th brother, why are you looking for me? Bao Pingyi's voice sounded a little old. President, the people of Chinko Hall have been too much these days. Yes, especially the 2 streets where 4th brother and I are. They have been looking for trouble. Today they even smashed my place. You can't even handle such a small matter? Bao Pingyi's tone seemed a little unhappy. President, don't worry. Little 7 doesn't dare to disturb President. It's just that I feel that the City Lord's mansion is about to lose control of Jinsher Street. Our chance has come. Oh? Jinsher Street is one of the most prosperous streets in Shangyang City. Chu Xn Ran is willing to give it up? Hehe, that City Lord Chu has just arrived. He hasn't even suppressed the city guards under him. How can he have the time to manage Jinsher Street? President, while the people of Chinko Hall haven't noticed, let's make the first move. At this moment, Bao Pingyi was silent for a while before saying, first, tell the brothers to be ready to make a move. However, we can't be anxious. After all, the City Lord's mansion still represents the Thunderblaze dynasty. We can't fall out in front of them. He paused for a moment before saying, secretly leak this information to Chinko Hall. President, this President is wise. President wants Chinko Hall to make the first move. Our 3 Swords Association is helping the City Lord's mansion eliminate evil. Go, I'll leave this matter to the 2 of you. The 2 of them happily agreed. Since this task had fallen on their shoulders, it meant that they could share the profits of Jinsher Street. After hearing all this, Leng Shiqi silently left the Bao residence. He already had a plan to lure Bao Pingyi out of the Bao residence. Chapter 140. At night 2 days later, all the stores on Jinsher Street had already been tightly closed. It wasn't that they didn't want to do business, but there were hundreds of people from the Chinko Hall and the 3 Swords gang gathered on Jinsher Street. Both sides were rubbing their fists. The smell of gunpowder was very strong, as if they could fight at any time. The leaders of the 3 Swords gang were Bao Pingyi's 2 subordinates, Nye Kuan and Ning Qi. They were both at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. The Chinko Hall was not to be outdone. They also had 2 leaders at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm, Tianhu and Ringan. At this moment, the 4 of them were talking bad about each other in front of others. Tianhu of the Chinko Hall was a burly man. He had the most violent temper. Under Nye Kuan's provocation, he couldn't bear it anymore. He raised the big axe in his hand and chopped down. Tianhu's attack was like a signal. Everyone began to attack at this moment. Ringan wanted to pull him back, but he didn't have time. He could only draw his short sword and face the 7th leader, Ning Qi. A great battle for control of Jinsher Street began. Both sides had accumulated grievances for a long time. Once they started fighting, they instantly became angry and bloodthirsty. Every moment there were people falling to the ground. However, they knew that the most important part of this battle was the battle between the leaders of both sides. Tianhu brandished his heavy axe, opening and closing with ferocious might, continuously forcing Nye Kuan to retreat. Nye Kuan held his long sword. Although he was being pushed back step by step, his expression was calm. On the other side, Ning Qi and Ringan were also evenly matched. It was a protracted battle between them. It was difficult to determine the winner in a short period of time. Just as the Chinko Hall and the 3 Swords gang were fighting, 2 figures stood on the roof in the distance. One of them was a middle-aged man around 30 years old. He had a square appearance, wore brocade clothes, and had an extraordinary bearing. He didn't look like an ordinary person. Beside him stood a short and slightly stooped person. That person was covered in a black robe and his face couldn't be seen clearly. The middle-aged man said indifferently, "Old Mr. Lu, who do you think will win among the four?" "Gaga, that depends on who City Lord Chu wants to win." The old man's voice was abnormally hoarse and even had a hint of ear-piercing feeling, making people feel uncomfortable. The middle-aged man was the newly appointed City Lord of Shangyang City, Chu Xinran. As for the old man surnamed Lu, he was naturally Leng Shiqi in disguise. Back to 2 days ago. After leaving Bao Pingyi's mansion, Leng Shiqi planned to find a way to lure him out. However, Bao Pingyi had always been extremely cautious. If they wanted to lure him out, they would have to do something big for him. Coincidentally, he heard that the Three Swords Association seemed to have the intention to fight for Jinshe Street, so he thought of a plan. And the most important part of this plan was the City Lord of Shangyang City, Chu Xinran. On the surface, this matter didn't seem to have much to do with City Lord Chu, but in fact it wasn't. Mao Kai's information also mentioned that this Jinshe Street was one of the few bustling streets in the City Lord's mansion. How could Chu Xinran have the thought of giving up so easily? Leng Shiqi vaguely felt that there was more to this than met the eye. For example, the news that Chinko Hall obtained was purposely released by the Three Swords Association. Then, could the news that the Three Swords Association obtained be purposely released by the City Lord's mansion? At that time, the more Leng Shiqi thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. However, Leng Shiqi didn't understand what City Lord Chu wanted to do. However, he knew one thing, and that was that Chu Xinran would definitely make a move against these two gangs. Of course, he couldn't destroy these two gangs all at once, but he could weaken their power to gain a foothold. If that's the case, I might as well help you, Leng Shiqi thought to himself. Thus he disguised himself. Because he was still young and not very tall, he could only disguise himself as an old man. He smeared paint on his arms and neck, and used a voice-changing technique to imitate an old man's voice. Then he snuck into the City Lord's mansion. In the City Lord's mansion, there were only a few sleepy city guards standing guard. In terms of defense, it was much worse than the Three Swords Association. On the other hand, Chu Xinran was still burning the midnight oil, dealing with various matters. Suddenly, the lights on the walls and the desk in the room flickered, as if they would go out at any moment. Chu Xinran's expression changed. He slowly put down his hand that was holding the brush and said without changing his expression, "Who are you? I would like to meet you." The short old man that Leng Shiqi disguised as walked out from behind the curtain and said with a sharp voice, "Hee, City Lord Chu, you flatter me. I'm just a lonely ghost, I don't deserve to be called an expert." Chu Xinran saw that someone had entered his room without him noticing. He couldn't help but be shocked, but his face remained calm. "Excuse me for not going out to meet you. May I know Senior's name?" "This old man's surname is Lu. So it's Senior Lu." Leng Shiqi didn't want to talk too much with Chu Xinran because he had experienced too little in this world. Now that he was disguised as an old man, he was afraid that the more he said, the more mistakes he would make. Thus, he directly said, "This old man has disturbed City Lord Chu this time because of Jinshe Street." When Chu Xinran heard the words Jinshe Street, a glint of light flashed across his eyes. But before he could speak, Leng Shiqi continued. "City Lord Chu doesn't need to say more. Now the City Lord's mansion in Shangyang City is being suppressed by two gangs. If it were me, I wouldn't be willing to accept this. Jinshe Street is indeed a piece of fat meat that causes two tigers to fight. But this piece of fat meat is not enough to hurt the two tigers. So this old man can help City Lord and let these two tigers really fight to the death. At that time, City Lord Chu can sit back and reap the benefits." Chu Xinran heard this and put his hands behind his back. On the surface he still looked calm, but his fingers kept shaking. It could be seen that his heart was not so calm. He said in a deep voice, "Then what does Senior Lu want?" Leng Shiqi replied, "I want the heads of the 4 spiritual guards." "For spiritual guards?" Chu Xinran's eyes flashed with doubt. "Yes, this old man and the 4 spiritual guards have an endless hatred, but they have been hiding in the mansion with Bao Pingyi and can't make a move. So, Senior Lu wants to use the matter of Jinshe Street to lure them out." "Yes. It's not that I look down on Senior, but the 4 spiritual guards are all spirit cultivators in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm, and it is said that they are also good at joint attacks, comparable to the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Senior, I'm afraid." Chu Xinran's words came to an abrupt end because a dagger was already at his throat. At this time, there was no trace of Leng Shiqi in front of his eyes. City Lord Chu doesn't need to worry about this kind of thing. Leng Shiqi's voice came from behind Chu Xen Ran. Chu Xen Ran's heart had already been set off a monstrous wave. As the city lord, he was at least at the spirit transformation realm, but he couldn't even catch a glimpse of the other party's figure. He said with difficulty, "Senior Lu is really powerful." When Leng Shiqi heard Chu Xen Ran call him senior instead of senior, he knew that this matter was settled. Next, the two discussed some specific plans and Leng Shiqi left. In the next 2 days, under Chu Xen Ran's urging, the conflict between the Chinko Hall and the Three Blades gang in Jinshi Street became more and more intense, and tonight's matter happened. Chapter 141. Leng Shiqi and Chu Xinran stood on the roof and watched the battle not far away. At this moment, Jinshi Street was covered in blood. The battle between Chinko Hall and the Three Swords gang had reached a climax. Leng Shiqi used a voice-changing technique to change his voice. City Lord Chu still hasn't made a decision? Chu Xinran's eyes were locked on Nie Kuan. He knew that Nie Kuan was not only powerful but also very scheming. He could be said to be Bao Pingyi's right-hand man. If he could kill him, the Three Swords gang would suffer a loss. Chu Xinran opened his mouth and said, "Nie Kuan." Leng Shiqi did not answer. Instead, a gray cloud came out of his body. When the gray cloud dissipated, he had disappeared. Seeing this scene, Chu Xen Ran's eyes flashed with traces of fear. On the other side of the battle, Nie Kuan and Tianhu were fighting the fiercest. Or it could be said that Tianhu was even fiercer. He waved his giant axe and cut down countless stalls. Everywhere he went was a mess. From the scene he did suppress Nie Kuan, but in reality, Nie Kuan was not injured. Instead, Tianhu's aura was a bit chaotic. Astute people could see that Nie Kuan was luring Tianhu to consume large amounts of spirit power. When Tianhu's spirit power ran out, it would be his death. The other leader of Chinko Hall, Rengan, had seen through it. He wanted to remind Tianhu, but unfortunately, Nie Kuan had already lured Tianhu away. Rengan had to concentrate on dealing with Ningqi, so he was powerless to do anything. Bang! Tianhu's heavy axe, which was flickering with dense spiritual light, smashed the roadside stall into pieces. However, it missed once again. When he used his spirit power to attack Nie Kuan again, he was shocked to find that he could not use his spirit power for a while. Only then did he notice that more than half of his spirit power had been consumed. Nie Kuan had a victorious smile on his face. The long sword in his hand was like a poisonous snake hiding in the dark, waiting for the opportunity to come. Now was the opportunity. Nie Kuan's long sword shook and instantly stabbed out several times. Each sword was aimed at Tianhu's vital points. Tianhu was shocked and thought that he had been careless this time. Just as Nie Kuan's sword was about to pierce Tianhu, a short figure suddenly appeared behind him, and a sharp dagger pierced his heart from the back. Nie Kuan's body suddenly trembled and he quickly turned around. His sword suddenly became steady and he narrowly blocked the dagger. Leng Shiqi did not expect Nie Kuan's reaction to be so fast. Nie Kuan's body was like a floating in the air. At this time, Nie Kuan's heart was already in his throat. He could not help but feel a bit of fear because he could not keep up with his opponent's speed. Zheng. Zheng's swords drew Inza's left, two purple swords in the air under the two gale slashes. Nie Kuan's sword was broken and he died. Zheng's, in Inzin's. Just. Nie Kuan's cultivation was on par with Leng Shiqi's, but there was a huge difference in theirs. In addition, he had already used up a lot of his. He was ambushed by Leng Shiqi and died. At this moment, Tianhu's two tiger eyes were wide open. He still couldn't believe his own eyes. Nie Kuan, who almost killed him, died just like that? He was almost killed in an instant. He was a spirit cultivator at the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. Could that person be an expert at the fourth realm of the sky realm? However, Leng Shiqi, who had killed Nie Kuan, said to him, "The Hall Master sent me to help you. Go and support Ringan." The Hall Master sent you? How come I don't know? Although Tianhu had a bad temper, he was not stupid. The person in front of him was too strange, and he could not help but be suspicious. How can you understand the Hall Master's thoughts? Do you know how much credit it is to kill Nie Kuan and Ningqi? Hurry up and go. Leng Shiqi pretended to be angry and shouted. All right. When Tianhu heard the word credit, he immediately threw away the doubts in his heart and turned to kill Ningqi. Leng Shiqi looked left and right. The place where they were fighting was far away from the battlefield, so there weren't many people who would notice this place. Fortunately, Tianhu had brought Nie Kuan here. Otherwise he would have to spend more effort. Then he once again hid in the darkness and disappeared. After that, the news of the death of the Three Blades Gang's fourth master, Nye Kuan, spread out at a strange speed. It reached the ears of the leaders of the Three Blades Gang on the surrounding streets, and also reached Bao Pingyi's ears. Bao Pingyi smashed the teacup in his hand. He suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a deep voice, "Is the news true?" The person who delivered the news nodded and said, "It's absolutely true. Right now there's only 7th Master in Jinshu Street. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long. They're all trash. Go quickly, get the nearby 3rd brother, 5th brother, and 6th brother to bring reinforcements. Tonight I want to see Tianhu and Rengan's heads." "Yes." A moment later, a large number of Three Blades Gang's reinforcements arrived at Jinshu Street. Rengan and Tianhu were caught unprepared. Facing the 4 leaders of the Three Blades Gang, they could only bitterly defend, and the injuries on their bodies became more and more serious. "Bah, the bastards of the Three Blades Gang don't abide by the rules, right? Go call for reinforcements," Tianhu shouted. Not long after, hundreds of Chinko Hall members rushed over. Both sides were fighting with their blood rushing to their heads, and no longer had any scruples. The more intense the fight, the more people died. The strange thing was, in some corners, there would always be people who died inexplicably. Both groups of people were crazily killing with red eyes. In Bao Pingyi's residence, there was an endless stream of people delivering news. "President, Chinko Hall's reinforcements have also arrived. They have more people than us. Good news. 7th Master has beheaded Chinko Hall's leader, Tianhu. Oh no, 7th Master is gone. You must avenge 7th Master, President." However, Bao Pingyi didn't say anything. Only the armrest under his hand had a few cracks from the tremors. He thought to himself, could it be that Chinko Hall wants to fight with me? Just for a small Jinshu Street? No, Go Huarong has been in charge of Chinko Hall for more than 10 years and has always been conservative. He won't be so impulsive. Something is strange. Just as he was thinking, another person rushed in from outside. He ran in with snot and tears and shouted in grief and indignation, "President, the 3rd Lord and the 5th Lord are both gone." "What?" Bao Pingyi instantly crushed the armrest of the chair into powder. "How is it possible? Chinko Hall's Hall Master, Go Huarong, has personally taken action." "Go Huarong has taken action?" Bao Pingyi doubted the reliability of the news at first. According to his understanding of Go Huarong, he wouldn't do such a thing. In this way they would really have to fight to the death. Although he knew that this day would come, he never thought it would come so soon. Vaguely he felt that there must be something fishy. At this time he was still hesitating whether to go out and fight. At this time, one of the 4 spirit guards behind him said, "With us 4 brothers here, there is no need for President Bao to worry. We can take advantage of this opportunity to help you occupy Shangyang City. It will be more convenient for you in the future." After Bao Pingyi heard this, he finally made up his mind. His aura of the 8th layer of the spirit transformation realm spread out and led everyone to Jinshu Street. Chapter 142. On the other side, Leng Shiqi, who was hiding near Jinshu Street, was surprised to see the Hall Master of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong, suddenly appear. However, he didn't have time to think about it and left the place because he knew that Bao Pingyi would definitely come out. In the past 2 days, Leng Shiqi had secretly walked around the entire Shangyang City. The system map had clearly shown the terrain of Shangyang City. Therefore, Leng Shiqi hurriedly rushed to the Bao residence, which was the only way to get to Jinshu Street. However, he didn't know that Chu Xinran, who was watching all of this from afar, sneered softly. Bao Pingyi and the 4 spiritual guards walked through the dark street, feeling a little uneasy in his heart. He felt that something was not quite right, but he had no choice but to come out. He could not just stand by and watch the people of Chinko Hall slaughter his gang members. Suddenly, his years of cautiousness made him extremely sensitive to danger. At this moment, he was keenly aware of a sense of crisis. Bao Pingyi's body suddenly stopped, his feet drawing 2 marks on the ground. Then he pulled out the 2 long swords at his waist and looked around vigilantly. The 4 spiritual guards instantly protected Bao Pingyi from all sides. One of them asked, "President Bao, what did you find?" "No, I just feel some danger." Bao Pingyi's eyes swept around and said carefully. The 4 spiritual guards' faces sank. "President Bao is too sensitive. Let's go to Jinshu Street. Moreover, with us 4 brothers here, we can ensure President Bao's safety." This? Bao Pingyi hesitated. The feeling of danger was still there. It was like a fierce beast hiding in the grass staring at its prey, and he was the prey. As long as there was a slight flaw, he would be buried in the tiger's mouth. This feeling made him very uncomfortable. However, the 4 spiritual guards were not Bao Pingyi's subordinates, but disciples of Heavenly Cloud Tower. He didn't have the qualifications to order them. However, he thought about it again. With these 4 guards from the Spirit Cultivator sect, unless an expert of the 4 realms of heaven appeared, he really had nothing to be afraid of. If a Spirit Cultivator of the 4 realms of heaven came to kill him, he would accept it. Thinking of this, Bao Pingyi nodded and continued to rush towards Jinshe Street. However, he didn't put down the long saber in his hand. Patter. However, they had only taken a few steps when a soft sound suddenly came from the dark corner of the street. Who is it? Bao Pingyi stopped again and immediately assumed a stance. His 2 blades emitted traces of spiritual light as he shouted towards that direction. The 4 spiritual guards also took it seriously this time, and held their respective sword hilts one after another. Unexpectedly, a few cat meows came from the darkness. It was actually a cat. Bao Pingyi heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At this time, the 4 spiritual guards were a little unhappy. They felt as if they had been played. Although they belonged to a third-rate sect, they were still disciples of true spirit cultivators. They didn't think much of a small gang like the Three Swords gang, so they were very unhappy with the fact that they had to protect Bao Pingyi. In their eyes, Bao Pingyi was just a clown. Now this clown's antics were even more annoying. Bao Pingyi was also a little embarrassed. However, he couldn't say anything and could only move forward. After a short while, the road was smooth and there were no more accidents. They could already faintly hear the sounds of fighting coming from Jinshe Street. Their footsteps couldn't help but quicken. At this time, a black shadow suddenly appeared from the side of the street. Bao Pingyi's 2 blades suddenly swung out. 2 thin blade lights flashed past and pierced the black shadow. Cough, President. President? That person's eyes widened as he looked at Bao Pingyi in disbelief. However, the vitality in his eyes immediately dissipated. Bao Pingyi pushed the person away and discovered that this person was actually a small leader of the Three Swords gang. Looking at his injured appearance, he should have just retreated from the battlefield. He actually killed his own people? At this time, Bao Pingyi also felt that he was a little too sensitive. As the saying goes, the first drum of energy, the second will be weak and the third will be exhausted. Now, the vigilance in his heart was slowly decreasing. At the moment when his vigilance was at its weakest, a purple crescent blade light suddenly bloomed under the body of the small leader who had fallen to the ground. The blade light whistled out as if it was going to cut through the night. It slashed towards Bao Pingyi with an astonishingly sharp intent. Bao Pingyi was aghast. He used the shortest time to throw out a wooden lump and quickly retreated. At the same time he crushed his waste token. The wooden lump kept making ka-ka sounds in mid-air. It was like a mechanism that rapidly changed and gradually formed the shape of a shield. Unfortunately, this shield had not been completely formed yet and was instantly cut in half by the purple crescent blade light. The purple crescent blade light's momentum did not decrease. At this time, a blue brilliance suddenly flashed in front of Bao Pingyi and turned into a water curtain. Puff! The blade light slashed onto the water curtain and instantly sank into it. It was almost directly cutting through the water curtain. However, the water curtain had extremely strong tenacity and forcibly blocked the blade light. However, the water curtain was also rapidly fading. After holding on for 2 breaths, it finally turned into a bubble. However, the purple crescent blade light had also consumed a lot of spiritual power and shrunk by more than half. However, it still slashed towards Bao Pingyi like a shadow. Bao Pingyi growled and waved his 2 blades again and again, slashing out dozens of blade lights. Unfortunately, when those blade lights touched the purple crescent blade light, they were easily cut into pieces. However, because of this, the purple crescent blade light shrunk again. In the end, it only had less than 10% of its power left. When it slashed Bao Pingyi, it produced a crisp, dang sound. Bao Pingyi's clothes were torn, but his body was unharmed. This was because he was wearing a golden soft armor underneath. The final blade light only left a shallow blade mark on the soft armor. Bao Pingyi's whole body was covered in a layer of cold sweat. His heart was also in his throat. He had calculated everything and taken precautions, but he never thought that someone would use such a strange method to assassinate him. What was even more terrifying was that the blade light just now was too terrifying. It had consecutively destroyed 2 of his life-saving trump cards and even exposed a 3rd one. What kind of blade technique is that? It's so terrifying. Is it really a spiritual pulse realm expert who came to kill me? Bao Pingyi was horrified. He was really scared by that blade. Leng Shiqi, who attacked, did not expect that Bao Pingyi would have so many life-saving trump cards. He had thought that the half-moon rapid light slash would at least be able to injure Bao Pingyi, but in the end, Bao Pingyi was still intact. He knew that things were troublesome, because the 4 spiritual guards had attacked. It took a long time to describe, but in fact, from Leng Shiqi's half-moon rapid light slash to Bao Pingyi revealing the golden soft armor, it all happened in a flash. The 4 spiritual guards did not have time to react, and all of this had already happened. At this time, the 4 of them had an unusually rich expression on their faces. There was surprise, shock, shame, and even a trace of fear. At the same time, they all had the same thought: if the target of that blade light was me, would I be able to survive? But in the next moment they were all furious. The mission given to them by the sect was to protect Bao Pingyi, but he had almost been killed. If this matter was ruined, they would not be able to escape the blame. That assassin had to die. The 4 spiritual guards pulled out their spirit swords at the same time. After releasing their mid-stage spirit transformation realm auras, they faintly felt like they were one. Then the 4 swords stabbed out. At the same time, Bao Pingyi turned around and fled. Chapter 143. Leng Shiqi saw that he was about to be stopped by the 4 spirit guards, and Bao Pingyi was running in the opposite direction. His speed was not slow and he had a movement technique, so he felt a bit anxious. It has to be said that there were more than 100 guards from the Bao mansion in the direction Bao Pingyi was running. Bao Pingyi and the 4 spirit guards were faster, so they were one step ahead. If Bao Pingyi met up with the guards, he would have no chance at all. I have to kill him before the guards arrive. However, at this moment, the swords of the 4 spirit guards fell. 4 steady sword moves were thrust out, carrying with them a scorching aura. The spiritual power in Leng Shiqi's body circulated rapidly, and a group of cold air suddenly gushed out. Then the cold air spread out and instantly engulfed the 4 spiritual guards. In the blink of an eye, their bodies were covered with a thin layer of ice crystals. A spirit cultivator? The 4 spirit guards were secretly shocked. Although this layer of ice was not very strong and they only needed 2 or 3 breaths to break out, they realized that their opponent was not simple. Leng Shiqi took this opportunity to rush out. He stepped on the black fog and his body floated in the wind. He looked slow, but he was actually as fast as the wind as he caught up to Bao Pingyi. Bao Pingyi felt the movement behind him. He turned around and saw Leng Shiqi chasing after him with a saber in his hand. Moreover, the distance between them was getting closer and closer. Bao Pingyi was shocked and his face turned ashen. There was a flash of light in his eyes. Instead of running away and being caught, it was better to fight head-on. As long as he could delay until the 4 spirit guards and the other guards arrived, he would be safe. He might even be able to kill this assassin. At this moment, Bao Pingyi suddenly turned around and his powerful aura of the 8th layer of the spirit transformation realm surged. He crossed his blades and the blades shined brightly. Leng Shiqi saw that Bao Pingyi was attacking instead of running and was very happy. He thought, there is no door to hell, yet you still dare to charge in. Leng Shiqi raised his saber to meet the attack. When the 2 of them got closer, Leng Shiqi was just about to use his half-moon swift slash. However, Bao Pingyi unexpectedly let go of the saber in his right hand. The next moment, Bao Pingyi pulled out a short knife from somewhere and pointed it at Leng Shiqi's vital point from an extremely strange angle. The 3rd saber. In fact, many people had always had a question. That was, Bao Pingyi was clearly best at dual blades, but the faction he had single-handedly created was called the 3 Blades Guild? Then why wasn't it called the Twin Sabers Association? At this moment, Leng Shiqi finally understood. Bao Pingyi had been hiding his 3rd weapon all this time. Not only was the blade fast, but the angle was also ruthless. The entire blade also flashed with a faint green light. Obviously, it had been dipped in poison. Leng Shiqi used the floating spirit steps to dodge. At the same time, he used the curved blade to block and slightly avoided the tricky attack. Bao Pingyi turned his body and slashed with the long and short sabers in his hands. At the same time, the other long saber was clamped by his neck. He twisted his head and the last long saber also came stabbing over. He was actually using 3 sabers with 2 hands. It was amazing. Moreover, his attack rhythm was very fast. His wrist, elbow, shoulder. Even every joint in his body could be used to operate the 3rd saber. Leng Shiqi had never fought with such an opponent before. He did not have any similar battle experience. Furthermore, Bao Pingyi's cultivation was far higher than his. He was actually at a disadvantage. Leng Shiqi also admitted that he had underestimated Bao Pingyi. The outside world was different from the Blood Fog Island. On the Blood Fog Island, no one had much time to study spirit techniques, so he could do whatever he wanted with his perfect spirit techniques. But in this great world, a spirit cultivator like Bao Pingyi who had lived for decades did not have much hope of breaking through to the fourth realm of the Sky Realm. He had a lot of time to hone his spirit techniques. His spirit energy foundation might not be as pure as Leng Shiqi's, but his decades of battle experience was far from what Leng Shiqi could compare to. What was worse was that at this time the 4 spirit guards also broke out of the ice and ran over. Leng Shiqi knew that he could not delay any longer. In the face of Bao Pingyi's rain-like attacks, Leng Shiqi opened his mouth and let out a roar that resounded through the night sky. This sudden roar caused Bao Pingyi's ears to buzz, and his attacks instantly slowed down. Leng Shiqi hurriedly retreated a few steps. His left palm shone with a faint starlight. Then, with a push of his palm, a turbulent cold air sprayed towards Bao Pingyi. The dense cold air froze Bao Pingyi in the blink of an eye, as well as the 4 spirit guards who had just rushed over behind him. Spirit attack, path of ice. The ice that sealed Bao Pingyi quickly cracked. Leng Shiqi knew that he could not trap him for long. His left hand reached to his waist and pulled out another scimitar. Then Leng Shiqi's spirit energy flowed rapidly, crazily pouring into the 2 scimitars. A few purple veins appeared on the blade, and 2 extremely bright saber lights shone. In the next moment, 2 stunning purple crescent blade lights whizzed out from the blade, splitting the sky in a forked shape and swallowing Bao Pingyi. Bao Pingyi was aghast and could only use his weapon to block in front of him. Only a few ka-ka sounds were heard. The 2 purple blade lights instantly shattered Bao Pingyi's weapon and landed on his golden silk soft armor. The soft armor was made of an unknown material. It was not only hard but also flexible. It blocked the blade lights, causing Bao Pingyi's body to fly backwards. But after a few breaths, the golden silk soft armor finally broke. Bao Pingyi's mouth was wide open in horror. He had just seen the 4 spirit guards frozen and knew that the person in front of him was also a spirit master. But he never thought that Leng Shiqi could almost instantaneously release such a large area of effect spell. He was shocked, he was angry, he was unwilling. He had been careful for decades, but in the end he was still going to die under the assassination of others. The cards he had painstakingly accumulated for decades could not stop the footsteps of the god of death. Just when he thought that he was going to die, for Scorching Sword Chi suddenly appeared and consumed half of the blade light spirit energy. Immediately, 4 swords appeared in front of Bao Pingyi at the same time to help him block the 2 purple moon blade lights. The blade lights and the swords collided, making a clanging sound and creating a dazzling spark. In the end, the blade lights were exhausted, but the 4 swords were also cut open. The 4 spirit guards had arrived at the most critical moment. Bao Pingyi had 1 foot in the door of death, but he was pulled back. He had escaped death and was gasping for breath. The 4 spirit guards protected Bao Pingyi behind them, and one by one, they glared at Leng Shiqi. Tonight's battle could be said to be extremely aggrieved because so far, they had not really fought with the assassin. But Bao Pingyi, who they wanted to protect, had almost died. Die. The 4 spirit guards shouted in unison and then rushed together. Leng Shiqi saw that Bao Pingyi had 2 deep blood marks in front of him. He was seriously injured, but it was not fatal. Facing the 4 spirit guards, Leng Shiqi raised his hand and shot out a dagger. The 4 spirit guards were just about to dodge, but they were puzzled again. It was because the dagger shot by Leng Shiqi was not aimed at them, nor at Bao Pingyi behind them, but flew over their heads at an oblique angle. Did he miss? They could not understand, but they did not need to understand. At this time, the 4 spirit guards just wanted to kill this person. So, the dagger continued to shoot. Just when the dagger was about to hit Bao Pingyi's head, a stone pillar as thick as his waist strangely appeared under him and lifted him into the air. Poochie, the dagger hit Bao Pingyi's throat. Chapter 144. Leng Shiqi had used such a strange method to kill Bao Pingyi, causing the 4 spiritual guards to be stunned. Bao Pingyi's death meant that their mission had failed. The 4 spiritual guards originally thought that this was just a very simple mission. In a small Shangyang city that did not even have a 4th realm of sky human, who could kill Bao Pingyi who was under their heavy protection. But Bao Pingyi was really dead. His death was inexplicable and his death was very strange. One could imagine that when they returned to the Heavenly Cloud Tower, they would inevitably face severe punishment from the sect. What made the four spiritual guards feel even more humiliated was that from the beginning to the end, they seemed to have been played by the assassin. As spirit cultivator sects, they simply could not bear it. So they immediately rushed over angrily. Four streams of sword chi appeared at the same time, wishing that they could tear Ling Shiqi into pieces. Ling Shiqi was relieved after killing Bao Pingyi, but according to the rules of the Blood Robe Pavilion, he had to bring back the assassination target's head before he could hand over the mission. At this time, when he saw the four spiritual guards rushing over, his eyes revealed a hint of annoyance. He had never fought with the four spiritual guards. Firstly, he was afraid that they would stop him from killing Bao Pingyi. Secondly, he did not want to be involved with the heavenly cloud tower. So he raised his hand and four earth walls suddenly rose from the ground. The four spiritual guards rushed over and crashed into the earth walls. The earth walls did not stop them for long, only stopping them for a moment. However, it was during this pause that Ling Shiqi stepped on the black fog and rushed to Bao Pingyi's side. Then he held the dagger and took Bao Pingyi's head. At this moment, Ling Shiqi's mission was finally completed. Although there were some twists and turns in the process, his goal was achieved. At this time, more than 100 figures rushed over. They were the guards that Bao Pingyi had bribed. When they arrived, the first thing they saw was Bao Pingyi's headless body. They all opened their mouths wide in surprise, and their hearts were set off huge waves. Their president, Bao Pingyi, who was at the 8th level of the spirit transformation realm, was actually dead. He died under the protection of the four spiritual guards? Could it be that a spirit cultivator of the four realms of heaven had made a move? At this time, some people even began to wonder if it was the four spiritual guards who had killed their president. One of the four spiritual guards pointed at Ling Shiqi and shouted, "This is the person who killed your president, Bao Pingyi." Hearing this, many of the sect members were furious when they saw Ling Shiqi. They all raised their weapons and pressed forward. Ling Shiqi sneered in his heart. Just as he was about to leave, he heard neat footsteps coming from both ends of the street. He paused and turned his head to look. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of spirit cultivators wearing silver light armor and holding standard weapons blocked the Ling Shiqi, the four spiritual guards, and more than 100 Three Blades gang members. There were even dozens of archers with arrows knocked on their bowstrings, ready to shoot at any time. It's the city guards. Why are the city guards here? Could this be Chu Xinran's doing? What should we do now? The people of the Three Blades gang were suddenly in a state of panic. At this time, a middle-aged man walked out from the group of city guards. He was the city lord of Shangyang City, Chu Xinran. Chu Xinran's gaze first looked at the sullen four spiritual guards, then turned to Ling Shiqi and finally landed on Bao Pingyi's head. He revealed a meaningful smile and said, "Mr. Liu, didn't you say you wanted to deal with the four spiritual guards? Why did you kill Bao Pingyi?" When Ling Shiqi saw Chu Xinran appear with the city guards, he knew that he had been tricked. His eyes flashed with a cold light and he said in a hoarse voice, "What do you want to do, Mr. Chu?" Chu Xinran casually straightened his sleeves and said cheerfully, "Old Mr. Liu has done me a great favor. I'm truly grateful to you. Since Mr. Liu has a grudge with the four spiritual guards, I will help you get rid of them." Chu Xinran wants to kill the four spiritual guards? A trace of doubt flashed through Ling Shiqi's heart. He quickly skipped through many thoughts in his mind. Combined with the sudden appearance of Chinko Hall's Hall Master Go Huarong in Jinshe Street, he faintly connected everything together. He was secretly shocked. So all of this has been under Chu Xinran's control all along. He must have secretly joined forces with Go Huarong to find an opportunity to severely damage or even destroy the Three Blades gang. Jinshe Street was a bait, and it just so happened that my appearance added fuel to the fire. What a good Chu Xinran. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but secretly admire Chu Xinran. This Chu Xinran had quickly gathered the city guards and joined forces with Chinko Hall when he first arrived. This method was really extraordinary. But all of this has nothing to do with me, Ling Shiqi thought to himself. Now that he had completed his mission, he had no intention of participating in the power struggle in Shangyang City, so he said, "Since City Lord Chu has the heart, please do as you wish. This old man has other matters to attend to, so I won't disturb you." With that, Ling Shiqi hid in the dark alley behind him and disappeared. Chu Xinran didn't stop him. He turned his head and shouted to the Three Blades gang. The Three Blades gang has been bullying the people and dominating the city for many years, causing Shangyang City to be filled with complaints. As the city lord, I naturally have to punish them. However, since the main culprit, Bao Pingyi, is dead, you can leave as long as you promise not to cause trouble in the future. Otherwise don't blame me for being merciless. When Chu Xn Ran said these words, many of the gang members were moved. Most of these people were actually hired by Bao Pingyi with money. They only had this relationship of interest between them. When they saw that only Leng Shiqi had cut off their source of income, they had dared to act. But now they didn't have the courage to face hundreds of city guards. It was true that they wanted money, but they wanted their lives even more. Immediately, 80% of the gang members fled in all directions, leaving only 20 or 30 people with sullen faces and motionless faces. These people were the ones who had followed Bao Pingyi to build the foundation of the Three Blades gang. They were the ones who were truly loyal to Bao Pingyi. At this moment, even though they knew that they would die, they still stayed. Chu Xinran sighed with emotion. Alas, there are still people who are so loyal to a selfish person like Bao Pingyi. Alas, what a pity. Shoot the arrows. Wait. Just after Chu Xinran gave the order, the 4 spiritual guards suddenly shouted. City Lord Chu, you should know who we are. Since Bao Pingyi is dead, we have nothing to do with the Three Blades gang. We won't interfere in your fight. Goodbye. Oh? Who allowed you to leave? Chu Xinran said with a sinister smile. What? Chu Xinran, do you know who we are? We are the disciples of the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion. How dare you touch us? Chu Xinran sneered. Humph, when you are all dead, who will know it was me? Shoot the arrows. So, dozens of arrows fell like a dense rain. The remaining members of the Three Blades gang were suddenly drowned in the arrows, and miserable screams rang out. The 4 spiritual guards could only bitterly resist. Even though they were in the spirit transformation realm, the arrows were not ordinary arrows. The people who shot the arrows were all spirit cultivators, so they were not easy to block. In the blink of an eye, all of them were injured. Chu Xinran waved his hand and hundreds of city guards slowly closed in. The 4 spiritual guards' faces were ashen. Leng Shiqi, who was hiding in the dark, quietly left. Chapter 145. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. The sounds of fighting could be heard throughout Shangyang City. Ordinary people could only hide in their houses and pray for a sense of security. They could only silently wait for the changes in Shangyang City. After Leng Shiqi left, he did not directly return to Shadewind Ridge. Instead, he went to Jinshe Street to take a look. The situation here was already one-sided. In fact, at the beginning, both sides had lost a team leader, so they could be considered to be evenly matched. However, the hall master of Qingkou Hall, Go Huarong, personally made a move. None of the leaders of the Three Swords gang could stop him and suffered heavy casualties. However, they did not scatter in all directions. They were still trying their best to hold on because they still had confidence and hope in their hearts. That confidence and hope came from Bao Pingyi and the 4 spiritual guards. As long as Bao Pingyi arrived, they would be able to stabilize the situation. As long as the 4 spiritual guards arrived, they would be able to turn defense into offense. Unfortunately, they did not know that Bao Pingyi was already dead and the 4 spiritual guards were not far from death. Leng Shiqi shook his head slightly. He had already predicted the outcome of the Three Swords gang. Then he turned around and ran towards a certain place. That was Bao Mansion. Not long after, Leng Shiqi quietly sneaked into the mansion. Now there were only 20 to 30 guards and some servants in Bao Mansion. Leng Shiqi was completely unstoppable. Byakugan, activate. He activated Byakugan and the entire Bao Mansion was within his field of vision. The target he was looking for was Bao Pingyi's private vault. Bao Pingyi was the leader of the Three Swords gang and had taken root in Shangyang City for more than 10 years. During this time he had collected countless precious resources. Moreover, he was a cautious person. It was impossible for him to give these resources to others for safekeeping. It was also impossible for him to build a vault in his mansion. Therefore, it was very likely that he had secretly built a secret chamber. This was the secret room that Leng Shiqi was looking for. There really is one. With the help of Byakugan's X-ray vision and the system map, Leng Shiqi quickly discovered that there was indeed a secret chamber 30 feet underground. Moreover, he could clearly see that there were more than 10 hidden mechanisms all over the secret chamber. Leng Shiqi immediately used Gaia's hand to drill into the ground, sneaking directly into the secret room and quickly destroying all the mechanisms. Only then did he begin to carefully observe the secret room. The secret chamber wasn't very big, only about 20 feet in radius. There were many large boxes on the ground, and there were some wooden shelves on the surrounding walls. There were also some things displayed on the shelves, but there weren't many of them. Leng Shiqi first opened the big boxes. Most of the things inside were gold, silver, and other treasures. He didn't care for these things. After all, to a spirit cultivator, spirit stones were the real currency. Of course, he still packed them all up. In the last few boxes there were some spirit tools. There were first and second tier spirit tools, but unfortunately, there were no third tier spirit tools. Lung Shiqi put away a 3-part spear. This spear could be divided into 3 parts, and there was a chain in the middle, making it more flexible to use. As for the rest of the spiritual equipment, he sold them all to the system for more than 300 system coins. After that, Lung Shiqi began to look at the things on the wooden shelf. Basically, there were some rare herbs on the shelf. They were mainly materials for refining pills. These resources were useless to Lung Shiqi, so he threw them all to the system. Now he had 641 system coins. It was enough for 6 intermediate lottery draws. It seemed like the harvest was not bad, but Lung Shiqi's eyebrows were tightly knitted. Because he had searched the entire secret chamber, but he couldn't find a single spirit stone, pill, cultivation technique, or spirit skill. These were the most important cultivation resources, but there was none. Impossible. Could it be that there are other secret chambers in the Bao residence? Lung Shiqi whispered to himself, but he couldn't find any other secret chambers even after using supercilious eyes and the system map. In the end, he could only sigh and leave the secret chamber. On the other side, there was only one person left in the 4 spirit guards. There weren't many injuries on this person's body, but his face was already deathly pale. Because there were several swords on his neck, if he dared to move, his head would be separated from his body. At this time, Chu Xen Ran walked in front of him and whispered, "Others call you the 4 spirit guards, this Chu still doesn't know your name." "Jigu," he carefully said. Chu Xen Ran's face came in front of his face and asked, "So it's Brother Ji, do you think this Chu will kill you?" Jigu suddenly felt a pressure on his heart. He silently swallowed his saliva and said, "Jigu is willing to listen to City Lord Chu's orders. It's good to talk to smart people. Then tell me who killed the other 3-4 spirit guards." Jigu's eyes spun as he thought for a bit and said, It's that assassin. He came to kill Bao Pingyi, but we couldn't protect Bao Pingyi and suffered heavy casualties." Chu Xen Ran clapped his hands and said, "Very good. Then do you know the assassin's name?" "Well, his surname seems to be Lu." Before Jigu could finish, Chu Xen Ran interrupted him. "No, his surname is not Lu but Lung. He's a fugitive named Lung Shiqi." "How do you know so clearly? Could it be that you—" Jigu suddenly covered his mouth, his eyes filled with fear. He was afraid of being killed. Chu Xen Ran sneered and said, "You should go back to Heavenly Cloud Tower later. You should know what to say and what not to say, right?" I know, Jigu hurriedly said. "But this Chu can't believe you, so I can only ask Brother Ji to take this pill." Chu Xen Ran took out a dark green pill and said. Jigu's eyes suddenly showed some desperation. "Brother Ji, are you not willing?" Jigu trembled and said, "After I go back, I will report to the sect as Mayor Chu said, but if I suddenly die, the sect will doubt my words." "Don't worry, I'm not that stupid. You're more useful alive than dead. After a while, someone will contact you and give you the antidote." Chu Xen Ran said and put the pill in front of Yashitsugu's mouth. Jigu knew that his life was in Chu Xen Ran's hands, and he also knew that from now on, he would become a chess piece in Chu Xen Ran's hands. But at this time, if he didn't take it, he would die. He had to close his eyes and swallow the pill. Chu Xen Ran smiled and waved his hand, "Let him go." The surrounding city guards withdrew their weapons, and Jigu immediately sat on the ground, panting wildly and couldn't help coughing a few times. Chu Xen Ran didn't even look at him and led his men to Bao Mansion. Soon after, Chu Xen Ran rushed into Bao Mansion with the city guards and searched everywhere. Soon they found the secret room where Lung Shiqi had been. However, when he saw that it was empty, his face suddenly became gloomy. Chapter 146. The next morning. The residents and peddlers of Shangyang City pushed open their doors as usual to prepare for today's work. The 2 streets where the battle had taken place last night had already been washed clean. There was no trace of blood, but the air was still filled with the smell of blood. Lung Shiqi had returned to his original appearance. His wide black clothes covered half of his face as he walked on the street. He had not returned to the Shadowwind Ridge to hand in the mission because he still had something to do. That was to replenish his spirit skills. In the later stages of Blood Mist Island, for some reason, resources such as cultivation methods and spirit skills became fewer and fewer. Instead, there were more and more spirit stones and pills. And ever since Lung Shiqi left Blood Mist Island, he had only cultivated the floating spirit steps. In other words, Lung Shiqi had not expanded his spirit skills for a long time. Right now, his sword, saber, fist, and spear techniques had already fused into a corresponding powerful move, but the rest were still incomplete. Lung Shiqi planned to buy some palm techniques, leg techniques, and finger techniques in Shangyang City. On one hand, he could directly increase his combat strength, and on the other hand, he could use them to see if he could fuse them into a powerful spirit skill. He patted the 100 or so spirit stones in the bag at his waist and walked into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. Most of the residents in each city were ordinary people. Although spirit cultivators and ordinary people lived in the same city, they were from two completely different worlds. Therefore, every city had streets specially prepared for spirit cultivators, known as the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. Only spirit cultivators could enter the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. Even if it was a shop worker, even if it was a handyman, he had to be a spirit cultivator. The scale of the Spirit Cultivator commercial street in different cities was also different. And in a small city like Shangyang City, there was only one street. When Lung Shiqi turned into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street, there were a few people standing guard on the street. When they saw him walking over, they wanted to stop him. Lung Shiqi did not stop walking or say a word. The spirit energy in his body moved and he emitted the aura of the spirit transformation realm. Those people immediately returned to their original positions obediently. Lung Shiqi walked straight into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. It was still early and there were not many people on the street. He then walked into a shop. After a while he came out, but his expression didn't seem to be very good. Then he entered 4 shops in succession, all of which sold spiritual techniques. When he came out of the last shop, his expression was a little strange. It was a mixture of joy and bitterness. He muttered to himself, I didn't think spirit skills would be such a scarce resource in this world." It turned out that Lung Shiqi had visited 5 shops that sold spiritual techniques in a row, but he had gained very little. Most of the goods in the shop were materials and spirit tools, but there were very few cultivation methods and spirit techniques. Because cultivation methods and spirit techniques were basically in the hands of the various spirit cultivator sects, the ones that could be sold in the shops were all unintentionally leaked out. Even if there were, their ranks were not high. They were only at the 1st or 2nd level. He didn't even see a single 3rd level spiritual skill. Moreover, the price was ridiculously high. Even an ordinary level 2 spiritual skill would cost around 100 spirit stones. Lung Shiqi felt a little weak in his heart. He originally thought that his spirit stones weren't small, but it turned out that it was only enough to buy a level 2 spiritual skill. He felt that the price was too high, so much so that he began to miss the days on Blood Mist Island. However, he finally realized the depth of the Blood Robe Pavilion's foundation. He still remembered that there were thousands of low-level spiritual skills on display on the 1st floor of the Blood Book Hall. Moreover, as long as he was promoted to Black-Clothed Assassin, he would be able to obtain a level 3 spiritual skill for free. This kind of treatment was not something that an ordinary sect could give. Later, Lung Shiqi had an idea. He found another way and requested to see the spiritual skills. 4 of the 5 shops agreed. Unfortunately, 2 of them only took out the real spiritual skills, so he used his unlimited skill points to secretly learn 2 level 2 spiritual skills. They were Forest Front Finger and Poison Fire Palm. At the time, Lung Shiqi rejected them because they were too difficult to cultivate. The shop owners didn't have any complaints because these 2 spiritual skills were very difficult to cultivate. For example, if one mastered Forest Front Finger, one finger could turn into a dense forest of finger shadows. However, to cultivate it, one had to polish one finger for many years, which took a very long time. As for the other Poison Fire Palm, it didn't take too long to cultivate, but one had to soak one's hands in poison every day. Moreover, it had to be cultivated in an extremely hot environment. Of course, after successfully cultivating it, one's palm strength would contain fire poison. Once the fire poison entered the body, it would continuously corrode the opponent's meridians. It could be said to be extremely vicious. Most importantly, the compatibility between the Poison Fire Palm and the 6 Yang Palm was extremely high. Lung Shiqi was confident that he could fuse them together. Thinking that he had earned 2 level 2 spiritual skills for free, Lung Shiqi felt relieved. He immediately walked out of the Spirit Cultivator business street and prepared to go to the Een Wind Ridge branch to submit the mission. However, not long after he walked out of the Spirit Cultivator business street, his body suddenly paused. He turned his head to look at a shop on the right. It was Mao Kai's coffin shop. Leng Shiqi thought to himself, so this guy actually opened the coffin shop here. No wonder he was able to collect so much information. At this moment, Mao Kai happened to see Leng Shiqi as soon as he appeared in the shop. He hurriedly gave Leng Shiqi a few glances and then entered the house. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes. Then he took a big detour and quietly snuck into the coffin shop. Mao Kai was shocked when he saw Leng Shiqi suddenly appear in the coffin shop. However, he didn't ask much and immediately said with an anxious expression, "Envoy, it's not good. Someone wants to harm you." Leng Shiqi's heart moved when he heard this. He couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. He had only been in Shangyang City for 2 days and had barely interacted with anyone who wanted to harm him. However, his heart immediately skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of someone. However, he deliberately asked in a tone of disbelief, "How is that possible? Who would harm me?" "Envoy, it's true," Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "then tell me who wants to harm me." This envoy, you know this little one?" Mao Kai rubbed his hands. Leng Shiqi's face turned cold. "Mao Kai, do you think you can get money from me with some groundless information? Besides, I'm about to return to the branch. Even if someone wants to harm me, they won't be able to." Mao Kai was stunned for a moment, then said, "Envoy, this little one can reveal a little to you. Although the person who wants to harm you is in Shangyang City, the method to harm you is outside. As long as the envoy still has to carry out missions in the future, you might fall into a trap." Leng Shiqi saw that Mao Kai didn't seem to be lying to him, so he said, "Okay, tell me. As long as the information is true and the price is reasonable, I won't treat you badly." Mao Kai's face immediately bloomed like a chrysanthemum. However, he immediately said solemnly, "Envoy, the person who wants to harm you is Shangyang City City Lord Chu Xinran." Chapter 147. In the coffin shop, Leng Shiqi listened to Mao Kai's narration, and the more he listened, the more shocked he became. What Mao Kai said was exactly what Chu Xinran told Ji Gu after Leng Shiqi left. After connecting all of this together, Leng Shiqi finally understood that the person who asked the Bloodcloth Pavilion to assassinate Bao Pingyi was Chu Xinran. Maybe when I went to find Chu Xinran, he had already guessed my identity, so he agreed to my request so easily, Leng Shiqi thought to himself, and at the same time he knew where he had miscalculated. He had never thought that his employer was Chu Xinran. Since the Bloodcloth Pavilion strictly kept the identity of the employer a secret, he had never thought about who the employer was from the beginning, which led him to step into Chu Xinran's plan step by step. In the end, Chu Xinran transferred all the resentment of the Heavenly Cloud Tower to him. I actually became a scapegoat. Leng Shiqi could not help but feel resentful. Since he came to this world, he had never been schemed against like this. However, this incident also reminded him that although he had schemed against others on the Blood Fog Island before, his opponents were all young teenagers. Even if some of them were very mature, they were still ignorant of the world. Leng Shiqi, who had lived 2 lives, could easily guess their thoughts. However, now that he had come to the Great Thousand World, the opponents he faced were far from comparable to the teenagers on the Blood Fog Island. It was not only the difference in cultivation realm, but also the difference in scheming and shrewdness. Leng Shiqi secretly decided to be more careful in the future, but he immediately thought of another question. How did Mao Kai know about this? And he knew so clearly? He looked at Mao Kai coldly. Mao Kai smiled and said, "Ambassador, the source of this information is absolutely reliable, so you can rest assured. It's a pity that after I got the news last night I couldn't find you. Now that Ji Gu has run away overnight, I'm afraid we can't catch up with him." Even if he did not say it, Leng Shiqi could guess most of it. Mao Kai probably had spies among the city guards. "Your information is indeed very valuable to me. Tell me, how much do you want?" Leng Shiqi admitted that he was a little careless this time. Fortunately, Mao Kai was well informed. Otherwise, it would be a big problem if he encountered people from Tianyun Tower in the future. When Mao Kai heard that he was going to pay, his 2 little eyes immediately narrowed into slits. This lowly one has always been honest with both the old and the young. Furthermore, this lowly one has specially informed the esteemed envoy of the news. This lowly one is showing his sincerity. As you know, this lowly one has to support all the informants in Shangyang City. That's not a small sum of money. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi saw that he wanted to continue being long-winded, so he interrupted, "Just tell me how much it is." Mao Kai didn't say anything. Instead, he stuck out a finger and looked at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi chuckled and threw out 2 spirit stones. Mao Kai immediately caught the spirit stones and his eyes lit up. However, he hesitated when he picked up the second spirit stone and said, "Esteemed envoy, this?" Leng Shiqi said coldly, "I want all the information about Chu Xinran." When Mao Kai heard this, he seemed to have guessed what Leng Shiqi was going to do. He was immediately shocked. "Esteemed envoy, what are you going to do? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. I just want you to give me information about Chu Xinran. Isn't one spirit stone enough?" Mao Kai said hesitantly, but this is against the rules." Leng Shiqi frowned. Mao Kai continued, "Esteemed envoy, you may not know this, but the intelligence disciples of our sect can only provide information to the esteemed envoys who have a mission. If there is no mission, we are not allowed to disclose information at will. After all, we are serving the sect, not selling information." Leng Shiqi understood after hearing this, but he didn't care about this at this time. He said directly, "Since there are sect rules, I won't make things difficult for you. However, rules are dead and people are alive. Do you want to return this spirit stone to me?" Mao Kai's hand holding the spirit stone began to tremble. There was a look of struggle in his eyes. In the end, he handed the spirit stone over and said, "Forgive me, but I can't break the sect rules." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. He could see that Mao Kai was really a person who loved money as much as his life, but such a person was actually so conservative. What an interesting person. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. He then said, "You are really loyal to the sect, but I also accepted the mission to assassinate Chu Xinran. Esteemed envoy, please don't bully me. I have never received any information about this." Leng Shiqi sat on the chair next to him and said slowly, "I don't have any information now, but I can find someone to go to the blood clothing pavilion with the spirit stone and issue the mission to assassinate Chu Xinran. Then I will accept it myself. It's just a matter of making 2 more trips. At that time, I will still come to you to ask for information. Unfortunately, most of the reward will be taken by the sect and I will lose out. If I lose out, so be it. As long as I can kill Chu Xinran, I will accept it. Unfortunately, I'm afraid someone won't even get half a spirit stone." After hearing these words, Mao Kai was a little stunned. He really didn't expect Leng Shiqi to think of such a loophole. He still hesitated and said, "Although that is the case, but..." Seeing that Mao Kai was still hesitating, Leng Shiqi took out 9 spirit stones from his mustard seed bag and placed them on the table. These spirit stones looked crystal clear and faintly emitted a faint spirit light. It was very eye-catching. Leng Shiqi said, "Instead of losing the spirit stones to the sect, it is better to give them to people who need them more. It saves me from making 2 more trips. What do you think?" Leng Shiqi's words were like the last straw that finally crushed Mao Kai's psychological defense. Mao Kai gritted his teeth and said quietly, "Deal. But esteemed envoy, you must not leak this matter. Otherwise, I will die even if I have 10 heads." "Don't worry, I understand," Leng Shiqi replied seriously. Mao Kai looked at the 9 spirit stones on the table and said, "Okay, please wait a moment." Not long after, Mao Kai brought over 2 pieces of information. Leng Shiqi opened them and quickly read them. During this time, his eyes flashed with killing intent. Soon Leng Shiqi walked out of the coffin shop. At this time, Mao Kai suddenly pounced on the table and stuffed the spirit stones into his arms. His face was full of smiles, but as he took them, he muttered, "I didn't break the rules, I didn't break the rules." When he finished taking all the spirit stones, an extremely soft sound suddenly came from the next room, but he was still keenly aware of it. He immediately stopped smiling and walked to the side room. Then he opened a secret passage and took out a piece of information. Urgent information? Mao Kai opened it and took a look. His face immediately changed and he shouted, "Not good, esteemed envoy, come back quickly." Chapter 148. Late at night in the city lord's mansion. Chu Xinran stood in front of his desk, picked up a brush and wrote "Qi" on the desk. At this moment his face was also very ugly. The reason was that he had no money. That's right, the city lord was now worried about money. He sighed deeply and said to himself, "Alas, I didn't expect that Bao Pingyi would deliberately build a fake secret room. No, I must find a way to find his private treasury. Otherwise, I won't be able to collect the promised salary for the city guards next month." Leng Shiqi, who had been lurking under his study, heard this and understood Chu Xinran's approach. It turns out that he took out all the money in the city lord's mansion to issue an assassination mission for Bao Pingyi in the blood-clothed pavilion and bribed the city guards. He was able to persuade the Chinko clan to take over the streets of the Three Swords Association. As for Chu Xinran, he wanted to use Bao Pingyi's private treasury to make up for the city lord's mansion's deficit. What a good plan. Fortunately, I arrived there one step ahead of time. Leng Shiqi came here at this moment for only one purpose, which was to assassinate Chu Xinran. Chu Xinran schemed against him and even put the blame on him for killing the 4 spiritual guards, causing him to provoke the heavenly cloud tower for no reason. He must take revenge. Of course, Leng Shiqi was not impulsive. After reading Chu Xinran's information during the day, he spent the whole day investigating the city lord's mansion. He found that Chu Xinran's vigilance was no less than Bao Pingyi's. Not only were there city guards patrolling around his room, but there were also many hidden sentries. If he acted rashly, he would definitely be surrounded. However, he was not unprepared. To be safe, he used all the system coins he got today for the lottery. The results were mixed. Out of the 6 intermediate lottery prizes, 4 of them were useless materials at this stage. As for the remaining 2, one was a treasure-seeking plate, which could search for nearby treasures. Unfortunately, it could only be used once. The other one was in Leng Shiqi's hands at this moment. Chu Xinran, who was still deep in thought, suddenly noticed the paper on the desk fluttering twice, but there was no wind. Chu Xianran immediately became alert. His eyes swept around, but he didn't find any trace of anyone. However, when he turned his gaze back, he was shocked to see a short figure sitting on the chair next to him. Chu Xianran felt a chill run down his spine. He silently cursed the guards and sentries outside for being blind. But when he took a closer look and realized that this person was a little familiar, a smile appeared on his face. So it's old Mr. Liu. Mr. really comes and goes like a shadow. I remember that Mr. said that you had something important to do. Why are you looking for me again? Leng Shiqi chuckled and said, Isn't Castellan Chu asking the obvious? I don't understand. At this time, Leng Shiqi didn't want to waste his breath on Chu Xianran. He opened his palm and there was a light blue rectangular transparent crystal. Then he injected his spiritual power into it and the crystal disappeared. Then 6 light blue curtains sealed the room from top to bottom. It was as if they were trapped inside the crystal. This was the intermediate level prize, a one-time consumable, the Forbidden Barrier. Not only could this barrier trap people, but it could also isolate all sounds, vibrations, and even spiritual energy fluctuations from the outside. The reason Leng Shiqi didn't choose to suddenly attack was because he wanted to set up a barrier first to avoid alerting the city guards outside. When Chu Xianran saw the barrier, his eyes immediately revealed a look of horror. He immediately shouted, "Guards!" However, there was no movement outside at all. Chu Xianran's expression couldn't help but become gloomy. He didn't expect Leng Shiqi to have such a method. Without the city guards, he could only face Leng Shiqi alone. Leng Shiqi didn't want to give him time to think. The moment he set up the barrier, he pulled out 2 scimitars and attacked. Chu Xianran let out a cold snort. His robe fluttered and a powerful aura suddenly erupted. It directly overturned the table before him. His cultivation was actually at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm. The table flew out and smashed towards Leng Shiqi, who was rushing over. 9th level of the spirit transformation realm. The information clearly said that Chu Xianran was at the 6th level of the spirit transformation realm, but he was still hiding his strength. Leng Shiqi was surprised, but he still slashed out with his scimitars. With a bang sound, the table was smashed into wood chips in the blink of an eye. Leng Shiqi's figure didn't stop at all. A purple light bloomed on the twin sabers. Chu Xianran's eyes widened. He knew that Leng Shiqi's scimitar technique was amazing, so he had to make the first move. He reached out his hands and golden light appeared on his palms. Then he suddenly slapped out. 2 abnormally powerful golden palms howled out. Leng Shiqi slashed out with his scimitars. His 2 scimitars collided with the golden palms and he felt as if his scimitars had hit 2 pieces of metal. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart couldn't help but tremble. It has to be said that his Gale Slash was at the peak of the spirit transformation realm and his scimitars were level 4 spirit artifacts. Even in this situation, he still couldn't beat Chu Xianran. More importantly, Chu Xianran was able to create palms? Leng Shiqi thought, spirit chi leaving the body is the sign of the spirit pulse realm of the sky realm. This Chu Xianran is a spirit pulse realm expert? No, his aura is clearly at the spirit transformation realm, but I understand he is at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Although there was only one realm between the spirit transformation realm and the spirit pulse realm, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. There were two conditions to break through to the spirit pulse realm. One was to compress the chi sea in the body into a spirit sea. In addition, one had to open up one of the 72 spirit veins in the body. Chu Xn Ran's spirit force was already at the point where his chi sea and spirit sea merged. Generally speaking, as long as someone like this cultivated steadily, there was a high chance that they could break through to the spirit pulse realm. From then on, they would be reborn, live longer, shed their mortal body, and step into the sky realm of the sky realm. Chu Xn Ran forced Leng Shiqi back with one move and laughed heartily. Haha, ignorant. What do you think this Chu is relying on? It's not those small tricks but my strength. You dare to kill me with just you? Immediately after, Chu Xn Ran once again sent out two palms. Two golden palms even more powerful than before flew toward Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi didn't dare to meet them head on this time and chose to dodge. A black mist rose from under his feet and he dodged the golden palms like a feather. The palms slammed into the bookshelves behind Leng Shiqi. The bookshelves and books instantly turned into dust. Dodge. Didn't you want to kill me? This Chu is standing right here. Come and kill me. Chu Xn Ran's palms flashed with a golden light as he shouted. Leng Shiqi seemed to be angered by Chu Xn Ran's words. He raised his two blades and charged straight at Chu Xn Ran. Chu Xn Ran saw this and laughed in his heart. Just as he was about to attack, Leng Shiqi's figure suddenly turned into 12 illusions and the blades in his hands turned into swords. Chapter 149. When Leng Shiqi rushed over, he used the system space to change his blade into a sword. His entire body entered a strange state in an instant. His body moved and turned into 12 phantoms. Each of the phantoms had a different movement. Some charged forward, some attacked from the side, some jumped high, some slid on the ground, some stabbed out with invisible sword chi and some stabbed out with light blue sword chi. What was even more strange was that although these illusions looked slow, they all stabbed towards Chu Xn Ran in the blink of an eye. Chaotic Blossom's dazzling eyes. This was a move that Leng Shiqi had used with his cultivation at the 5th level of the spirit transformation realm. It was a combination of the ethereal steps, the impacting meridian sword energy, and the cold frost sword energy, dazzling flowers. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Chu Xn Ran was at a loss of what to do in the face of 12 phantoms. He couldn't tell which one was Leng Shiqi's real body, or rather all of them were real bodies. The smile on his face disappeared and turned into shock. He couldn't believe that such an exquisite spirit technique was mastered by a mere spirit transformation realm cultivator. However, he didn't have the time to think about it. He could only clench his teeth and send out 4 golden palms. Wherever the palms passed, the illusions and sword chi were scattered. However, there were still 4 illusions that came to his side. At this critical moment, Chu Xn Ran lowered his body and dodged the sword. His body suddenly spun and a faint golden light surrounded him in an attempt to block the remaining 3 illusions. Unfortunately, Leng Shiqi's 3 phantoms were extremely agile, and with the help of Byakugan, they quickly found Chu Xn Ran's weakness. 3 streaks of sword chi pierced Chu Xn Ran's ribs, waist and legs respectively. The sword chi tore open 3 bloody wounds. 2 of the channel opening sword chi and 1 of the frost sword chi entered his body and blocked his meridians and froze his flesh. Chu Xn Ran was extremely shocked. He immediately used his spirit energy to disperse the sword chi. However, the 3 sword chi were like maggots that were difficult to get rid of in a short period of time. The key was that he didn't have that much time to get rid of the sword chi because Leng Shiqi turned around and sent out another sword strike, aiming straight for Chu Xn Ran's throat. At this time, Chu Xn Ran could only suppress the 3 sword chi to prevent them from spreading. Then he stomped his feet on the ground and used the force to quickly retreat. Leng Shiqi's sword pierced through the air. He flicked his wrist and 3 frost sword chi flew out. Soon after, he pointed his spear, aiming at Chu Xn Ran's throat. With a low roar, his entire body surged with an unparalleled domineering aura. Then he straightened his spear and charged over like a sharp sword. Halfway through, the tip of the spear flashed and a huge cross-shaped light suddenly shot out. At this time, Chu Xinran had just smashed the 3 frosty sword chis and saw Leng Shiqi's fierce move. It was too late for him to dodge. At this moment, a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. But he immediately stuck his tongue out and swallowed a small pill hidden in his teeth. After swallowing the pill, Chu Xn Ran's aura suddenly skyrocketed. The robe on his upper body flew off, and a crystal-clear meridian could be vaguely seen on his right arm. That was the spiritual vein. At this moment, Chu Xinran had actually used the power of the pill to forcefully open half of his spirit meridian. However, he was still not in the spirit meridian realm. At most, he was half a step into the spirit meridian realm. Originally, as long as Chu Xinran was given 1 or 2 more years, he could naturally break through, but now that he was facing a life-and-death crisis, he had no choice but to forcibly increase his strength. However, this was equivalent to destroying his own future. For someone like him, who used external items to forcefully open a spirit vein, even after breaking through to the spirit vein stage, it would be difficult for him to progress. He would probably die of old age at this stage. Thinking of this, Chu Xinran's face was filled with hatred and madness. Originally, he had come to Upper Yang City to give himself a chance to show off. According to his original plan, as long as he pacified the city guards and dealt with the Three Blades gang, he could go into seclusion to cultivate. As long as he broke through to the Spirit Pulse realm, Upper Yang City would be in his hands. After that, he would be able to conspire for another major event. However, his plans had been completely disrupted today, and he had even lost his cultivation future. He was filled with hatred. He wanted to kill Leng Shiqi. Chu Xinran pushed out his right palm, and a golden palm shadow that was 3 times larger than before shot out, meeting Leng Shiqi's formation-breaking cross spear. The cross light at the tip of the spear collided with the golden palm shadow, and an explosion occurred, causing the entire barrier to tremble slightly. The white light and the golden palm shadow reflected off each other, and in the end both gradually dissipated. Neither could do anything to the other, but Leng Shiqi's 3-section spear had a few more cracks. At the same time, his expression was not good. He had used 2 killing moves, Chaotic Blossom gradually mesmerizing eyes and formation-breaking cross spear, but they were still unable to do anything to Chu Xinran. Is this the strength of an orthodox spirit cultivator, a half-step spirit vein stage spirit cultivator? However, Leng Shiqi immediately sensed that half of the spirit vein on Chu Xinran's right arm had dimmed a lot. It was obvious that the palm strike had consumed a lot of his energy. Just as Leng Shiqi was about to attack again, Chu Xinran made a move first. A golden light flashed behind him, and he actually passed through the golden ripples and instantly appeared beside Leng Shiqi, sending out another fierce palm strike. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's hair stood on end. He did not expect Chu Xinran's speed to be so fast. Leng Shiqi immediately moved his spirit energy, and the patterns on his back and abdomen suddenly lit up. Then, a gold and silver light flashed, and his body suddenly expanded. A layer of thin silver armor covered his body. He had activated 2 beast origin battle patterns at this moment. His aura exploded. However, Chu Xinran's golden palm shadow had already arrived with boundless strength. Facing this abnormally ferocious palm strike, the force of the palm pierced his face, causing him to feel a faint pain. At this moment he was instead extremely calm. Suddenly, a flash of understanding appeared in his mind, and he unexpectedly followed up with a palm strike. When the palm struck out, it instantly turned into 6 palm shadows, and within the palm shadows, there was a bit of fire. Then, the 6 palm shadows suddenly merged into one. Leng Shiqi's palm also ignited a faint flame and blasted against the golden palm shadow. Boom boom boom. The 2 palms collided, and suddenly a violent force was set off. With the 2 of them as the center, the tiles and furniture in the entire room were all blasted out and smashed into the barrier. There was no place in the entire room that was intact. Leng Shiqi's body was blasted out and slammed into the barrier. The thin armor on his right arm was completely broken, and traces of blood seeped out. His arm was a little twisted, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Obviously he was seriously injured. As for Chu Xinran, he was not in a good state either. The spirit vein on his arm had disappeared, and his entire arm was charred black as if it had been burned. And if one could see inside his arm, they would be even more surprised to find that the meridians, bones, and flesh had already been corroded to a terrible state. This was the 6-yang poison fire palm that Leng Shiqi had fused with the 6-yang palm and the poison fire palm at the critical moment. Chapter 150. The 6-yang poisonous fire palm had completely crippled Chu Xinran's right arm. It was his strongest right arm after unlocking his spirit vein. Chu Xinran had already begun to lose confidence. After using all his trump cards, he was the one who was injured even more. At this point, he began to seriously doubt the identity of his opponent. Leng Shiqi's cultivation level was not very high, but his spirit force was pure and his foundation was deep. Not only was his blade technique amazing, but his sword technique, spear technique, and palm technique were all stronger than the last. How could such a person be just a small assassin in black? However, what happened next shocked him even more. Lung Shiqi's left hand flashed with starlight and a circular formation appeared before him. A huge sword tip with a shocking cold aura appeared from it. The cold aura overflowed, causing Chu Xinran's limbs to stiffen. Then the sword tip suddenly shot out and pierced his heart. It was Spirit Attack Ice Giant Sword. Chu Xinran spat out several mouthfuls of scarlet blood. He stared at Lung Shiqi with eyes filled with disbelief. He muttered, "Impossible," however before he could finish his sentence he fell to the ground and died. Seeing that Chu Xinran was finally dead, Lung Shiqi immediately gasped for breath. Although he had activated 2 beast origin battle patterns in this battle, he had still suffered heavy injuries. Moreover, the consumption of spirit force was extremely large. In particular, the newly comprehended 6 Yang poisonous fire palm had consumed more than 30% of his spirit force. At the same time, he had used this battle to fuse another move, which was a pleasant surprise. He had discovered that the higher the intensity of the battle, the faster his comprehension of spirit techniques would be. Then Lung Shiqi looked around. The forbidden boundary was still there, so he did not have to worry about being noticed. Then he swallowed a few pills and began to search Chu Xinran's body. Unexpectedly, he found a mustard seed bag. Chu Xinran was only at the spirit transformation realm. Even though he was the lord of a city, Shangyang City was only a small remote city. Logically speaking, he should not have something as precious as a mustard seed bag. But since there was, it showed that Chu Xinran's identity was not that simple. Lung Shiqi didn't care about this. His face lit up as he hurriedly opened it. First of all, the space in this mustard seed bag was half as small as his, and there were very few things inside. There were only a few dozen spirit stones and some ordinary medicinal pills. The rest were Chu Xinran's personal belongings. It could be said that the harvest was meager. This was a little too shabby. However, Lung Shiqi thought about how Chu Xinran emptied the treasury of the city lord's mansion. Chu Xinran might have even lost his own fortune. What's this? Lung Shiqi suddenly saw 2 strange things in the mustard seed bag. One of them was a dark blue round plate that was half the size of a palm. One side of the plate was engraved with the 9 heavens profound thunder, while the other side was engraved with the word, dark. He didn't understand what it meant, but he could roughly guess that it was a symbol of status. The other was a tattered map with the words, Tomb of XX Marquis vaguely written on it. Lung Shiqi glanced at it a few times before throwing it into the mustard seed bag. Finally, he burned Chu Xinran's body with fire, erased all traces, removed the forbidden boundary, and left the city lord's mansion from underground. The next morning, Lung Shiqi appeared on the street. His face was slightly pale as he ate some breakfast at a roadside stall. Then he bought a horse and walked towards the city gate. However, when he arrived at the city gate he stopped. It wasn't because someone stopped him, but because he found a strange symbol in the corner of the city gate. It was the secret sign of the Blood Garment Pavilion, which meant that there was an important matter. Is this the sign Mao Kai left for me? Or is there someone else in Shangyang City? Forget it, I'll go find him first. It won't take much time anyway. Lung Shiqi thought to himself. Then he turned back and walked towards the coffin shop. When Mao Kai saw Lung Shiqi again, he immediately shouted in surprise, "Emissary, you're not dead." Lung Shiqi's face sank when he heard this. Seeing Lung Shiqi's unfriendly expression, Mao Kai smiled awkwardly and said, "Emissary, please don't assassinate Chu Xinran. I just received an urgent secret report last night. Chu Xinran's cultivation. It's the peak of the spirit transformation realm." Lung Shiqi finished Mao Kai's sentence. Mao Kai was startled for a moment, then his eyes and mouth slowly widened. His lips trembled as he said, "Emissary, how did you know? Could it be that you've already?" At this point, Mao Kai made a throat-slitting gesture. Lung Shiqi didn't say anything and only nodded. He didn't deliberately hide it from Mao Kai. After all, he had taken the information on Chu Xinran from Mao Kai, and the news of Chu Xinran's death would probably spread soon. Mao Kai sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this. That's the peak of the spirit transformation realm. And his identity is extraordinary. Did he really die? In truth, there was something Mao Kai didn't say out loud. Lung Shiqi's cultivation was only at the 5th layer of the spirit transformation realm. How could he kill Chu Xinran, who was at the peak of the spirit transformation realm, and assassinate him in the city lord's mansion? The city guards hadn't even discovered it yet. How did he do it? Of course Mao Kai didn't ask too much. He knew that trouble comes from the mouth. Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "The news should spread soon. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first." Although he had killed Chu Xinran, he was still injured. He wanted to return to the pavilion to recuperate. However, he didn't expect Mao Kai to stop him and say, "Emissary, please wait. There's something you might not know." Leng Shiqi stopped and asked in confusion, What is it?" Mao Kai leaned over and whispered, "That Chu Xinran's identity is not simple. He is the Dark Thunder Guard of the Thunderfire dynasty." Dark Thunder Guard? When Leng Shiqi heard this, he immediately thought of the token with the thunder pattern engraved on it. Mao Kai explained, "Emissary, you might not know this, but the Dark Thunder Guard belongs to the Thunderfire dynasty's royal family. They are responsible for dealing with shameful matters. Moreover, they have great authority. They can monitor the royal family and investigate the officials and commoners. Those who can enter the Dark Thunder Guard are all elites among elites. Chu Xinran is one of them." Leng Shiqi nodded. "So that's how it is. That Chu Xinran is indeed extraordinary." Mao Kai continued, "Emissary, you killed a member of the Dark Thunder Guard. The higher-ups will definitely send people to investigate. If there are any clues left behind, I'm afraid they will quickly find you." At this moment, Leng Shiqi was a bit glad that he had destroyed all the traces, so he said, "I erased the traces of the fight. They shouldn't be able to find anything." Mao Kai heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. If he was really found out, he might also be found out by following the vine to the melon. With that, Leng Shiqi left. Chapter 151. At this moment in the city lord's mansion, a large group of people were walking back and forth in front of Chu Xinran's room with anxious expressions. Why hasn't the city lord come out yet? After the battle between the Chinko Hall and the Three Sabers Association, there are still a lot of messes to clean up. We have to wait for the city lord to make a decision. Did something happen? Why don't we go in and take a look? That's not very good. We're all doing this for Shangyang City. I don't think the city lord will blame us. All right. Everyone pushed open the door, but what they saw was a mess. Everything that could be seen was shattered into pieces and squashed against the wall. Only half of a charred corpse was left in the room. They turned pale with fright and looked at each other. They knew that something bad had happened. And the culprit of this matter, Leng Shiqi, had already urged his horse out of the city and rushed back to the Yin Wind Ridge. The city lord's death could not be hidden. After all, so many people and guards had seen it. The city lord's mansion was originally a plate of loose sand, so the news quickly spread. When the news of Chu Xinran's death came out, the entire city was in an uproar. Whether it was the ordinary residents or the spirit cultivators, they were all a little uneasy. The destruction of the Three Sabers Association 2 days ago had made many people realize that Shangyang City was about to change. But only a day had passed, and the new city lord, Chu Xinran, was also dead. Such a huge change made many people feel uneasy, causing the already desolate Shangyang City to become even more lifeless. However, as the saying goes, some people are happy while others are sad. And vice versa. There was one person in the city who was very happy, and that was the hall master of the Chinko Hall, Go Huarong. He and Chu Xinran had joined hands to exterminate the Three Sabers Association, and Chu Xinran died the next day. This was equivalent to giving the entire Shangyang City to him. Of course, there were also many people who guessed that it was Go Huarong who killed Chu Xinran, but he did not care about that. He directly sent out all his gang members, and in just a day he occupied more than half of the streets in the city. Vaguely, he was about to become the overlord of Shangyang City. Even until late at night, the city lord's mansion was still brightly lit. There was an endless stream of people coming and going inside, but everyone's faces were filled with worry. There was an atmosphere of panic that enveloped the entire city lord's mansion. In the room where Leng Shiqi and Chu Xinran were fighting, an old man with a goatee was pacing around with bright eyes. He seemed to be observing every detail in the room, fearing that he would miss out on even the slightest clue. This man was the famous coroner master in Donglin County, Zhuang Qingping. He had solved countless strange cases for Donglin County. It was even rumored that he could tell the cause of death, the time of death, how many people he had killed, what kind of weapon he had used, and even what kind of spiritual technique he had used just by looking at a corpse. Until now, he had never made a wrong judgment. He could be said to be an eccentric. Coincidentally, Zhuang Qingping happened to be passing by Upper Sun City. When he heard that the city lord Chu Xinran had died mysteriously, he took the initiative to show himself. The people in the city lord's mansion didn't know how Chu Xinran had died, so they couldn't report to their superiors. When they learned that Zhuang Qingping was here, they welcomed him as if he had caught a life-saving straw. After a long while, the old man squatted in front of the charred corpse that had been burned to the point where it no longer had a human shape. His hands suddenly emitted a faint layer of spiritual light, as if he had put on a pair of thin gloves. He began to carefully examine Chu Xinran's corpse, which only had half of a charred corpse left. The more he examined, the more he frowned. He waved his hand, and then a very stout man next to him bowed and said, "Lord Zhuang, what can I do for you?" This man's name was Zhong Qi, and he was Chu Xinran's deputy. He helped him deal with the affairs of the city lord's mansion. Now that Chu Xinran was dead, many troubles fell on his head. Zhuang Qingping asked, "Let me ask you, did no one hear anything last night?" Zhong Qi answered seriously, "Lord Zhuang, according to the report of the guards in the mansion, there was no sound in the room last night." Zhuang Qingping was surprised and said, "That's strange. From the degree of destruction in the room, the spiritual energy fluctuations should be comparable to a spirit cultivator at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. How could no one notice such a big commotion? And from the traces, someone used an extremely powerful spear technique. Other than that, City Lord Chu's body also had sword wounds and traces of scarlet poison palm force entering his body. However, the fatal injury that caused City Lord Chu's death came from a powerful ice spirit technique. His body was set on fire after his death. The more Zhong Qi listened, the more shocked he became. His eyelids twitched as he said, "Lord Zhuang means that there were 4 people who avoided all the guards and hidden sentries last night. At the same time, they sneaked into the City Lord's mansion to assassinate City Lord Chu. There was even a spirit cultivator among them." "That's right. But that's impossible." Zhong Qi still found it hard to believe. "Nothing is impossible. Originally, I was also curious as to why they could sneak in so easily without making any noise. It seems like this was the work of that spirit cultivator. Look, everything in this room is broken beyond recognition. Only the surrounding walls are undamaged. It must be that spirit caster who set up a restriction formation or something like that. The abilities of spirit cultivators have always been strange and unpredictable. There's no need to make a fuss over nothing." Zhong Qi said, "So it's like that. Then who does Lord Zhuang think the culprit is?" Zhuang Qingping coldly snorted, "Humph, to be able to take out such a large sum of money and send out 4 spirit transformation realm late-stage spirit cultivators, including a spirit cultivator to assassinate City Lord Chu. Such a person is definitely not someone you and I can provoke. Furthermore, if I'm not wrong, City Lord Chu's identity is probably not simple. Forget it, this old man is just passing by and does not want to meddle in other people's business. You just need to follow my instructions and report it. Don't worry about anything else." Zhong Qi nodded his head and said, "This official understands. Many thanks for Lord Zhuang's help." Lung Shiqi did not care about the changes in Shangyang City. He had already completed his mission and killed the enemy who schemed against him. Now he did not have any lingering thoughts or interest in Shangyang City. He just wanted to quickly return to the pavilion and recuperate. It was also because of his injuries that his speed was slower. He did not return to the pavilion for an entire day. In the end, he could only sleep in the wilderness. However, he did not care. He directly sank into the ground out of habit. After casually eating and drinking, he began to cultivate and recuperate. However, not long after, he vaguely heard hurried footsteps coming from the ground. Lung Shiqi immediately opened his supercilious eyes and immediately saw several huge balls of spirit qi. Among them, the weakest was more than 10 times his spirit qi. One of them had an enormous spirit qi that could be said to be terrifying. Lung Shiqi was shocked. Although he did not know the specific cultivation level of these people, there was no doubt that they were experts of the 4 realms of heaven. Why would so many experts of the 4 realms of heaven suddenly come to such a remote place? Chapter 152. The next morning, Lung Shiqi had already arrived near the Shady Wind Ridge. He selectively forgot about the spirit cultivators of the 4 realms of heaven and human that he had accidentally met last night. He didn't dare to have a curiosity that he shouldn't have. He drove the horse away and entered the Shady Wind Ridge alone. His speed was not slow as he stepped on the black fog. After a while, Leng Shiqi arrived at the entrance of the pavilion. However, he saw dozens of people gathered there from a distance. He could feel the strong smell of gunpowder even from so far away. Leng Shiqi frowned. Is someone here to cause trouble for the Blood Robe Pavilion? This is the Blood Robe Pavilion, one of the 7 top sects in the world. Even if it's just a branch, it's not something that ordinary sects can afford to offend. Then, he hid his figure and quietly went around from the side. He did not expect to find a familiar figure behind a big rock. That person was Fan Jingchu, who had brought him to the Donglin County branch. At this time, Fan Jingchu was looking in the direction of the entrance of the branch. Suddenly, someone patted him on the shoulder. Fan Jingchu was immediately startled. He pulled out a dagger from somewhere and was about to stab. However, when he saw that the person was Leng Shiqi, he immediately stopped and let out a sigh of relief. He said in a low voice, "Junior brother Leng, it's you. You almost accidentally injured yourself without making a sound. By the way, you just came back from a mission, right?" "That's right." Leng Shiqi nodded. He then asked, "Senior brother Fan, what happened in the pavilion? Who are those people?" Fan Jingchu said with a serious expression, "They're from the Tang family." "The Tang family?" Leng Shiqi recalled the distribution of forces in Donglin County. Speaking of the forces in Donglin County, the Mountain Sea sect, one of the 9 major sects, was naturally the dominant one. Even the Thunder Flame dynasty was suppressed. However, the area of Donglin County was not small. The Mountain Sea sect was built in the vicinity of the sea. Of course, other forces would be born in the remaining large area. Sects like the Blood Robe Pavilion and the Mountain Sea sect that could be ranked on the world sect ranking were considered the top forces. The sects below them were divided into 3 levels. From bottom to top, there were third-rate forces, second-rate forces, and first-rate forces. Experts who were able to cultivate to the spirit aperture realm had the qualifications to establish their own sect, and the forces established by people of this realm were generally third-rate forces. The Heavenly Cloud Tower, where the 4 spiritual guards belonged, was a third-rate sect. In Donglin County, there were dozens of third-rate forces, and there were only about 10 second-rate forces. As for first-rate forces, there were only 2, and the Tang family was one of them. The Tang clan was a great clan that had risen in recent decades. Their clan leader, Tang Haoquang, was a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. But why did they come here? Leng Shiqi asked in confusion, "What is the Tang family doing in our branch?" "Brother Leng, there's something you don't know, but this matter is very satisfying." Fan Jingchu raised his eyebrows and said, "The Tang clan's reputation in Donglin County can be said to be second only to the Mountain Sea sect. The biggest reason is that the Tang clan has a genius called Tang Heyu. This person broke through to the spiritual pulse realm at the age of 24, which shocked the whole Donglin County and even overshadowed the disciples of the Mountain Sea sect. There are even rumors that the Tang clan may become one of the 10 aristocratic families in the world sect ranking list because of Tang Heyu." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi knew that Fan Jingchu had not gotten to the point, but he was not in a hurry. He even cooperated and asked, "Tang Heyu is really worthy of the title of genius." "Then what happened?" Fan Jingchu curled the corner of his mouth and said coldly, "Then just a few days ago Tang Heyu was killed." "He was killed? Such a great genius was killed?" Leng Shiqi's mind raced. Combined with the appearance of the Tang clan here, he instantly thought of a possibility. Tang Heyu was probably killed by the Blood Robe Pavilion. Fan Jingchu continued in a proud tone, "Junior brother Leng should have guessed it. Yes, Tang Heyu was killed by a disciple of our sect. The person who carried out this task is called Bing Shang. He can be said to be a genius disciple of our Donglin County branch. He is definitely not more than 30 years old and has just broken through to the spiritual pulse realm not long ago. In terms of cultivation speed, he may not be as fast as Tang Heyu, but in terms of combat effectiveness, the result is obvious." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi also understood the ins and outs of the matter. Bing Shang, a killer of the Donglin County branch, killed the genius of the Tang clan, Tang Heyu, so the Tang clan came to settle the score. However, Leng Shiqi had another question. He asked, "Our Blood Robe Pavilion is only responsible for carrying out tasks. Even if the Tang clan wants to take revenge and make trouble, they should not come to us. Besides, the Tang clan does not have the strength to challenge the Blood Robe Pavilion." Fan Jingchu snorted coldly and said, "As everyone knows, we only do things for money and do not have any grudges. But after all, this is Donglin County, which is too far from the general pavilion, and the Tang clan is a local tyrant, so they shamelessly asked for the information of the employer. The one who came was Tang Haoqing, the elder of the Tang clan and also Tang Heyu's father. He was in the gang spirit realm and brought many masters of the celestial being realm to suppress the situation. But as the employer of the killer force, the information of our sect must not be leaked. This is the root of the problem, so they began to negotiate there. After figuring all this out, Leng Shiqi somewhat despised the Tang clan's behavior. They did not have the ability to find out the mastermind behind, so they came to make trouble for the Blood Robe Pavilion? But suddenly he had a flash of inspiration. Tang Haoqing and his gang could not be those people he met last night, could they? Leng Shiqi secretly estimated that the possibility was great. Masters of the celestial being realm were not cabbages on the roadside. They were probably these people. At this time, Fan Jingchu suddenly said, "Hey, there seems to be a quarrel over there." Leng Shiqi looked up and saw that the two leaders of the Blood Robe Pavilion and the Tang clan began to quarrel loudly. It seemed that the negotiation had failed. The leader of the Blood Robe Pavilion was Guiju, the leader of the Blood Robe Pavilion. He was saying in a low voice, "Tang Haoqing, your Tang clan is so powerful. Today you have already broken the rules of our pavilion by coming here. You want the information of the employer? Dream on." Tang Haoqing, the elder of the Tang clan, was already as black as the bottom of a pot. He immediately said angrily, "I have already said that the Tang clan will pay whatever price you want. Don't you make money by assassination? Now I will pay you more. Tell me who wants to kill Tang Heyu." No comment. Guiju said firmly. Tang Haoqing's face was as dark as water. He said through gritted teeth, "Don't forget that this is Donglin County." Guiju's attitude was even tougher. He snorted and said, "Don't forget that standing in front of you is the Blood Robe Pavilion, one of the 7 unique in the world." Chapter 153. Ghost Ju and Tang Haoqing did not budge an inch and faintly emitted their own spiritual pressure. However, their expressions were very different. Ghost Ju's face was somewhat calm because he knew that Tang Haoqing would never dare to attack the Blood Cloak Pavilion unless he was crazy. Tang Haoqing's face was more resentful and humiliated. In fact, he had secretly come this time behind the family head's back because Tang Heyu was his son. He knew that the family head would definitely not let him come to the Blood Cloak Pavilion branch, so he could only secretly bring people here. Originally, he wanted to use the power of the Tang family and the high reward to persuade Ghost Ju, but he did not expect Ghost Ju to be so unreasonable. In the face of this situation, he had no other choice. He knew very well that he could not do anything. Once he did, it would be equivalent to completely provoking the Blood Cloak Pavilion. His own son had been killed, but he did not even know the real murderer. An indescribable and nameless fire burned in his body, causing him extreme pain. On the other side, Leng Shiqi and Fan Jingchu were still whispering to each other. Leng Shiqi said, "Senior brother Fan, do you think they will fight?" Even if the Tang family had 10 times the courage, they would not dare to do anything. "Do you know?" Fan Jingchu said this and stepped on something, making a crisp sound. The sound was very soft, but Tang Haoqing was sharp enough to catch it. He was about to explode, so he immediately turned his head and shouted, "Where did this rat come from?" Tang Haoqing angrily punched out, and a visible red fist with blazing flames suddenly lit up the night sky, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. The flames swept over with a terrifying temperature, and everything in their path was turned into ashes. The target of the flames was where Leng Shiqi and Fan Jingchu were. The flames appeared too suddenly and came very quickly. They could feel the blazing aura from afar, as if they had been thrown into a sea of fire. Leng Shiqi was horrified. He didn't know why Tang Haoqing would suddenly attack him, but he knew that if he didn't run now, there would be nothing left of him. He hurriedly circulated his spiritual energy, and his body suddenly grew taller. His whole body bulged with sturdy muscles, directly bursting his black clothes and mask. At the same time, a silver-white brilliance enveloped him, covering him with a thin layer of silver armor. Double Beast Origin Battle Pattern. After activating the Spiritual Ruin Beast King and the Silver Scale Fire Armored Crocodile's Beast Essence battle patterns, the Leng Shiqi's strength and defense greatly increased. However, the ferocious flames also began to rush over. Leng Shiqi quickly used Ghost Parade and dodged to the side using Spirit Steps. This series of changes happened in an instant. Leng Shiqi quickly flashed out, but Fan Jingchu was a beat slower. The raging flames suddenly swallowed the big rock and Fan Jingchu. It was as if a giant flame beast had swallowed him completely. He didn't even have a chance to scream before there was nothing left of him. Although Leng Shiqi wasn't hit head-on, just a little bit of the aftershock was enough to scorch the thin silver armor on his back. Bursts of intense pain instantly spread throughout his body. What was even more terrifying was that the flames exploded after swallowing Fan Jingqiu. Leng Shiqi was in the range of the explosion. He was horrified. He raised his right hand and 5 earth walls appeared in front of him. Immediately, his left hand flashed and emitted a dense cold air that covered the earth walls. The 5 earth walls instantly turned into 5 ice walls. Leng Shiqi continued to turn and run. Every few steps he ran, he would erect an earth wall behind him. At this time, the scattered flames smashed down. When they touched the ice walls, they immediately caused a sizzling sound. The 5 ice walls didn't even last a second before they turned into a pool of mud. The fire continued to spread, and the earthen walls that Leng Shiqi had set up were all shattered like paper. From beginning to end, it had only bought him less than 2 breaths of time. However, it was these 2 seconds that allowed Leng Shiqi to hide in the dense forest next to him. Unfortunately, a ball of fire still hit his back. Pooh! Leng Shiqi immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. The fire burned the thin armor on his body. The thin armor was actually transformed from his skin. This was equivalent to burning his skin and flesh. In addition, a majestic blazing aura poured into his body, constantly destroying his meridians and internal organs. Even though Leng Shiqi's body was strong and he had activated 2 Beast Yuan battle tattoos, he still couldn't bear it. He could only quickly burrow into the ground. He didn't dare to stay for a moment. He went more than 100 feet underground before stopping. He hurriedly swallowed a few elixirs to restore his qi, blood, and spiritual power, and then began to suppress the extremely violent blazing aura in his body. At the door of the pavilion, Ghost Ju was secretly surprised when he saw Tang Haoqing suddenly attack. He had long noticed that there were 2 people hiding nearby. He had always thought that they were the Tang family's secret sentries or passers-by. If they were from the Blood Cloak Pavilion, they would have come directly. There was no need to hide. But in fact they were really from the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Coincidentally, Fan Jingqiu and Leng Shiqi had just returned from a mission. Leng Shiqi didn't know much about Donglin County, so he asked a few more questions. Who would have thought that he would bring disaster upon himself? Under Tang Haoqing's fire, Fan Jingqiu's face was turned to ashes before he could even see it. But when Ghost Ju saw Leng Shiqi's face, his eyes suddenly widened. Leng Shiqi? Why was Leng Shiqi there? In this pavilion, anyone could die except for Leng Shiqi. When Ghost Ju saw Leng Shiqi was hit by the fire, his qi and blood surged, and his horrible spiritual power at the peak of Gang Spirit Realm broke out. Dozens of people in front and behind, except for Tang Haoqing, were all shaken out. At this moment, there were gusts of chilly wind around Ghost Ju, and his blood-red robe was rustling in the wind. He stared at Tang Haoqing, revealing an amazing murderous intent. Seeing this, Tang Haoqing's face turned a little pale. Although he was in the same realm as Ghost Ju now, Ghost Ju used to be one of the 9 famous Ghost Blood Cloak killers, a great master in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. Now his cultivation realm had fallen, but his fighting experience and means were far beyond Tang Haoqing's. Ghost Ju raised his arms, and the chilly wind around him suddenly spread out. Suddenly, a strong chilly wind blew in a radius of hundreds of feet, and the sound of ghosts crying could be faintly heard. Seeing this, Tang Haoqing's face finally changed. He shouted, "Ghost Ju, you're serious? Go to hell." Ghost Execution let out a low roar. Ghost energy surged out from his body, and in the blink of an eye, the ghost energy turned into fierce ghosts that circled in the air. In less than 2 breaths of time, over 100 fierce ghosts had appeared. Tang Haoqing stomped on the ground with 1 foot and clenched his fists in front of him. Then he smashed his fists on the ground with a muffled shout. Suddenly the fist spirit burst out, and a huge column of fire shot up from the ground, shining in all directions. He spread his arms, and the column of fire covered his whole body, so that the ferocious ghosts could not get close to him. Ghost Ju smiled coldly, and his body was changing strangely. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a ferocious ghost that was 10 feet high. His 2 ghost claws moved and instantly tore the column of fire apart. Then the ghosts rushed to Tang Haoqing, howling. Chapter 154. Leng Shiqi, who was hiding deep underground, was about to suppress the fire in his body when the ground suddenly shook. Then he heard the sound of hundreds of ghosts crying and flames exploding above him. What was even more terrifying was that two powerful spirit force fluctuations suddenly appeared, causing him to spit out another mouthful of blood. There's a fight above? We can't stay here. Lung Shiqi was shocked again and quickly ran away. Otherwise he would only get more injured. It wasn't until he was several miles away that he could no longer feel the two spirit force fluctuations. Only then did he feel relieved. At the same time he secretly cursed his bad luck. He and Fan Jingchu didn't do anything, yet they were inexplicably attacked. Fan Jingchu died on the spot and he was seriously injured. Lung Shiqi checked his injuries. He was already injured in the battle with Chu Xinran, and now his body's condition was even worse. His entire back was charred black and there were even a few hideous bloody wounds. It looked a bit too horrible to look at. But the more serious injuries were his internal injuries. Tang Haoqing's flame was a little strange. It was not a simple flame, but more like it was derived from some kind of fist technique. This was because Lung Shiqi could clearly feel that the residual flame in his body still contained bursts of fist force. The flames and fist energy had destroyed most of the meridians in his back. If it wasn't for the fact that he cultivated a body refining technique, his body would be much stronger than ordinary people. He would have died on the spot. Then Lung Shiqi used all his spirit force to suppress the flames and fist energy. After an entire day he finally suppressed them. This was only suppression, he hadn't completely forced them out of his body. Fortunately it was only a matter of time. At this point, Lung Shiqi let out a breath and wiped the dense sweat on his face. Then his eyes flashed with hatred and a desire for strength. He hated Tang Haoqing but he also yearned for that kind of strength. Tang Haoqing only threw a punch from afar. Just a little bit of the aftershock and residual flames touched Lung Shiqi, and he was seriously injured. How powerful was that? However, Lung Shiqi knew his limits. What he needed to do now was not to hate or desire, but to heal his wounds. He returned to the ground and looked up to identify the terrain. I remember there's a small town nearby. Let's go there and rest for a few days. Xinzi Town was an ordinary town near Shangyang City. After Lung Shiqi arrived at Xinzi Town, he found an inn and shut himself in, slowly recovering from his injuries. What he didn't know was that there were more and more outsiders coming to Xinzi Town these past few days. On the 10th day he had almost used up all of his healing pills, and his injuries had finally improved by about 70 to 80%. However, he was in a very bad mood. For the past 10 days, he had only cared about recuperating from his injuries, so his cultivation had not improved at all. The path of cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. If one did not advance, one would fall behind. These 10 days could be considered as a waste of time. He walked out of the room with a sullen face and prepared to pay the bill. Coincidentally, two people came to check out behind him and they were whispering to each other. Lung Shiqi sensed that these two people were only in the pure spirit realm, and they looked to be in their 30s. They were obviously spirit cultivators with poor aptitudes. At first, he did not pay much attention to them, but by chance he seemed to have heard the word City Lord's Mansion. His heart skipped a beat, and he channeled his spirit energy to his ears, quietly listening to their conversation. Brother Li, is the news reliable? Brother Wang, don't worry. I went out last night to inquire, and this news was released by Shangyang City's City Lord's Mansion. It can't be fake. But I remember that Marquis Buyan died a few hundred years ago under the siege of the imperial court. Where did the tomb come from? Those high and mighty people are all very powerful. How can we speculate about them? Since the City Lord's Mansion has released the news of finding Marquis Buyuan's tomb, why don't we try our luck? Who knows, maybe we'll find it. When the time comes, we'll definitely be rewarded. Fine, since I have nothing to do, I'll accompany Brother Li on this trip. Ah, good brother. At this time, Lung Shiqi also finished paying the bill. It was the two people's turn and they stopped talking. Lung Shiqi thoughtfully walked out of the inn. As soon as he left the inn, he immediately noticed that there were many more people in the town than when he first came, and many of them seemed to be in a hurry. Could it be that they're all here for Marquis Buyuan's tomb? However, he was very unfamiliar with the words Marquis Buyan, but he had seen the word tomb on a broken map not long ago. After that, Lung Shiqi bought a few books in town that recorded the history of Shangyang City. The Marquis Buyuan was a person who lived more than 300 years ago. At that time, Shangyang City was not as desolate as it was now. Although it was not very big, it was very famous, and the merchants that came and went were very dense. The most important reason was that Shangyang City had a Marquis Buyan. It was said that Marquis Buyan was born in an ordinary family in Shangyang City. Although he became a spirit cultivator, his cultivation talent was very ordinary. He was able to earn a position in the city guards, enough to support his family. Later, when the Thunderblaze dynasty and the newly proclaimed Northern Wei dynasty went to war, Marquis Buyuan resolutely joined the army. But he did not expect that from then on, he would start a glorious life. Marquis Buyuan was not afraid of death on the battlefield, and he repeatedly performed miraculous deeds. His position was quickly promoted and he was valued by the higher-ups. He was passed down a high-grade cultivation technique, and his cultivation began to advance by leaps and bounds. Finally, when the war ended, he used his illustrious achievements to rise from a common soldier to the title of Marquis Buyuan. It could be said that his future was limitless. However, what no one expected was that he actually gave up his military position and returned to Shangyang City with only the title of Marquis. It could be said that he gave up his great future. Many people found it hard to understand. Later on, something even more incomprehensible happened. About 20 years later, someone secretly reported that Marquis Buyuan was secretly preparing a large amount of money and weapons. It seemed that he was up to no good. The dynasty immediately sent people to investigate, and it turned out that it was true. The unparalleled Marquis Buyuan was actually up to no good, and the evidence was conclusive. Suddenly the world was in an uproar. Not long after, the dynasty sent people to encircle Marquis Buyuan's residence, and Marquis Buyuan died in battle. From then on, Shangyang City was implicated and slowly declined. After reading this, Leng Shiqi felt that something was wrong, but he could not say what it was. After all, it was someone from more than 300 years ago who could know the truth. But at this time he was a little hesitant. He now had two choices. One was to return to the Shadowwind Ridge to submit the mission and then cultivate for a while. In the past few days, he found that the bottleneck of the sixth layer of the spirit transformation realm had loosened. It would not be long before he could break through. The other choice was to go and see the so-called tomb of Marquis Buyuan. Maybe he could fish in troubled waters and fish for some benefits. After pondering for a while, Leng Shiqi made a decision. Chapter 155. Leng Shiqi decided to look for an opportunity. His mission only needed to be completed within a month. There was still half a month left, so he was not in a hurry. Moreover, after handing in the mission he would still have to cultivate and carry out missions step by step. If this continued, when would he be able to break through to Celestial Realm 4? Leng Shiqi did not forget the mission Wuxiang gave him, which was to break through to the Spiritual Pulse Realm within a year. It was definitely impossible to do it just by cultivating hard. The news of Boiwanhu's tomb had attracted so many people, so it did not seem fake. This could be considered an opportunity. Moreover, it was near him. It would be a pity if he did not give it a try. Most importantly, he had been provoked by Tang Haoqing. At that time, Tang Haoqing had only casually thrown a light punch, but that little bit of aftershock had seriously injured Leng Shiqi. What kind of powerful strength was that? This also made Leng Shiqi deeply feel how weak he was. Even if he thought that his talent was extraordinary, his comprehension was high, and he had the system as a cheat, his potential could be said to be extremely high. However, potential was only potential, not strength. Therefore, Leng Shiqi was also very anxious to improve his strength, and Boiwanhu's tomb was an opportunity. His only concern was that it was a bit too much of a coincidence for such a thing to happen so soon after the change in Shangyang City. However, since the news came from Shangyang City, there would definitely be more accurate and detailed information in the city. Moreover, he had sources of information in the city. Half a day later, when Mao Kai saw Leng Shiqi appear, he was also a little surprised. He immediately asked, "Emissary, did you accept another mission near Shangyang City?" Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "It's a long story. I came to you this time to ask for some information about Boiwanhu's tomb." "TSK emissary, you want to get involved too?" Mao Kai showed a stunned expression at this time. Leng Shiqi frowned and said, "Can't I?" Mao Kai subconsciously said, "You really can't." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw that Leng Shiqi looked a little unhappy. He immediately explained, "Ambassador, you may not know the rules of our sect. All the disciples of the blood-clothed pavilion are not allowed to participate in the fight for natural treasures." "Why is that?" Leng Shiqi was really surprised this time. What kind of strange rule was this? Mao Kai explained, "Well, this is about the nature of our sect. The blood-robed pavilion was an assassin force, and countless people had died at their hands. He had even killed the disciples and elders on the world sect ranking. He had even killed the sect leader. In this world, there are as many forces that want to destroy our sect as there are hairs on an ox. Over the past 1,000 years, there have been countless forces that have risen and fallen. Why is our sect still able to exist and even be ranked as one of the 7 invincible sects? This is not only because our sect is strong, but also because we know our own situation and position. The Blood Robe Pavilion was actually a sword in the hands of all the sects in the world, a sword hidden in the darkness. Those things that could not be done openly were left to this sword to do. Therefore, even if the Blood Robe Pavilion was hated by countless people, no one mentioned that they wanted to destroy our sect because everyone needed this sword. Therefore, since the establishment of our sect, there has been a rule that we are not allowed to participate in any grudges or vendettas, nor are we allowed to fight for natural treasures, secret opportunities, and so on. Lung Shiqi quietly listened to Mao Kai's words and understood the reason behind it. He also agreed with the Blood-Robed Pavilion's approach. Since the Blood-Robed Pavilion was a sword in the hands of all the sects in the world, it could only be an honest sword. Therefore, the disciples of the Blood-Robed Pavilion had to maintain absolute neutrality and only act according to the mission. They could not be mixed with any personal grudges. It was no wonder that when he wanted to assassinate Chu Xinran last time, Mao Kai had tried his best to stop him. Once the Blood-Robed Pavilion was tainted with karma, it would probably lead to a disaster in an instant. However, Lung Shiqi was not very interested in this. Even in the Blood-Robed Pavilion, not many people recognized him. As long as he disguised himself well, who would know that he was from the Blood-Robed Pavilion? Therefore he said directly, "I know. Give me the information." "Mao Kai," he immediately said with a sad face, "Emissary, I've been talking for a long time, but you didn't listen to me at all. Don't worry, I'll hide my identity well. Besides, I'm the one who broke the rules. If the higher-ups blame me, I'll bear the responsibility alone. No, I broke the rules by giving you the information. I'll definitely be severely punished." Mao Kai shook his head. Lung Shiqi smiled gently and said, "Anyway, you've already broken the rules once last time. What are you afraid of?" Mao Kai hurriedly made a shushing gesture and said in a low voice, "Emissary, please keep your voice down. Last time, I didn't know Chu Xinran's true strength and identity. You have to know that he's a Dark Thunder Guard. Even if I kneel in front of you, I won't give you the information." "Is that so?" Lung Shiqi raised his eyebrows and said, "In fact, your information was not of any substantial use. It even almost cost me my life because of the wrong information. Also, you took 10 spirit stones from me. I haven't had the time to settle this with you yet." Lung Shiqi's tone became colder as he spoke. Mao Kai immediately shivered. I didn't know the truth back then. Humph, as long as you give me the information about Buyuan Ho, I'll forget about what happened before." Mao Kai's face instantly drooped and his eyes were full of hesitation. Lung Shiqi saw his hesitation and knew there was a way. He continued, "Mao Kai, do you know that there are only 0 or infinite chances of breaking the rules? Anyway, you've already broken the rules once. What's the harm in breaking it again? Besides, only the heavens and earth know about this. As long as you and I don't say anything, the sect will definitely not know about this." Mao Kai heard this and felt that it made sense. He coughed dryly and glanced over from time to time. Lung Shiqi saw this and smiled inwardly. He knew that this matter was settled. He took out a spirit stone and placed it on the table. Mao Kai immediately ran into the room to get the information. "Emissary, I've brought all the information about Buyuan Ho, but I don't know if I should say something." Mao Kai took out a small stack of files and asked with a solemn expression. Lung Shiqi nodded and said, "Go ahead." "Emissary, not long after Chu Xinran's death, there was news in Shangyang City that Buyuan Ho had secretly built a tomb nearby. This is too much of a coincidence. I also heard that a few days ago, the famous coroner master Zhuang Qingping entered the city lord mansion. I'm afraid there's something fishy about this." Lung Shiqi heard this and said seriously, "Don't worry, I've already thought about this matter. I'll be careful. By the way, you must have information about Chinko Hall. Give it to me." Mao Kai. Chapter 156. Lung Shiqi carefully studied the information related to Boiwanhu's tomb. First of all, the historical record was similar to what he had read before. The only difference was the ending. In reality, Boiwanhu did not die in the hands of Dynasty. Instead, he escaped and disappeared. Later on, Dynasty's people raided the Marquis residence, but they did not find any wealth or weapons. According to the testimony of the people in the Marquis residence, Marquis Buyuan had once built a magnificent mausoleum for himself. There were treasures hidden in it and he left a map for his descendants. Unfortunately, Boiwanhu's family had been killed and he had no descendants. No one knew where the map was. Leng Shiqi discovered a crucial point in the information. There was a map in the mansion that recorded the location of Boiwanhu's tomb. However, it was incomplete. The map was divided into 4 parts. The mansion had one, the Chinko clan and the Three Swords gang had one each. As for the last one, no one knew who had it. Thinking of the map, Leng Shiqi immediately took out a tattered map from his mustard seed bag. It was the one he had found on Chu Xinran. This should be the one in the mansion. No, that's not right. According to the information, there's still a map in the mansion. I'm afraid the map I have is Bao Pingyi's. At that moment, Leng Shiqi suddenly recalled that he only had time to take Bao Pingyi's head after killing him. He did not take anything from him. Presumably, Bao Pingyi had kept the map fragment with him. Later on, Bao Pingyi's body fell into Chu Xinran's hands. Naturally, he took everything. He did not expect the map to fall into Leng Shiqi's hands. It seems like the map in the mansion's hands was brought by Chu Xinran. Perhaps he came to Shangyang City for Boiwanhu's tomb. Since the Chinko clan has a map too, it might be a breakthrough, Leng Shiqi said to himself softly. When night fell, he went to the Chinko clan's headquarters. It had been more than 10 days since Leng Shiqi assassinated Bao Pingyi. These days it could be said that Chinko Hall was at its most prosperous. This was especially true for the hall master of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong. At first, his Chinko Hall and the Three Sabers Association could be said to be evenly matched. But not long ago the Three Swords gang had actually boarded the Heavenly Cloud Tower ship, and had even obtained the 4 spiritual guards. These were 4 spirit transformation stage spirit cultivators from proper spirit cultivation sects. His subordinates who were born in the wilderness could not be compared to him. Therefore Go Huarong felt a strong sense of urgency. Coincidentally, it was at that time that the new city lord of Upper Sun City, Xuexin Ran, secretly found him. Both sides' target was the strongest Three Blades Guild, so they immediately hit it off and secretly joined hands. After that, things went very smoothly. The Three Blades Society was destroyed, and Xuexin Ran died inexplicably. Go Huarong seized the opportunity to take over 70% of the streets in Shangyang City. Countless people fought to join Chinko Hall. The current Chinko Hall had already become the well-deserved overlord of Shangyang City. Therefore, in the past few days, Go Huarong had been holding a banquet with countless guests. Even at night it was still very lively. Leng Shiqi disguised himself as a hunchbacked old man and walked over. When he reached the door he was stopped by 2 gang members. "Who is it? Do you have an invitation?" Leng Shiqi used a voice-changing technique to imitate a hoarse voice and said, "I want to see your hall master. Give this letter to him and he will see me." As he spoke he took out a letter. The gatekeeper took it and said, "I will go and inform him." Not long after, the gatekeeper hurried back, followed by an elegant middle-aged man. The gatekeeper said in a low voice, "It's this old man." The middle-aged man cupped his fists and said, "Haha, I am the steward of Chinko Hall, Shui Wenli. Oh mister, please come in. The hall master is waiting in the side hall." Leng Shiqi followed him into the main hall. Along the way they exchanged a few pleasantries. He only revealed that his surname was Lu, and he didn't say anything else. Leng Shiqi followed Shui Wenli to the side hall. Sure enough, there was a man in green standing there. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s. This was the hall master of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong. As soon as Go Huarong saw Leng Shiqi he smiled and said, "Brother Lu, please sit." Leng Shiqi sat down unceremoniously and said bluntly, "Hall Master Go must already know why I am here. So the last piece of the map is with Brother Lu. If you and I work together, it means that we have half of the map. Finding Boiwanhu's tomb is just around the corner. However, the map is too important. I still need to take a look at it to be at ease. I wonder if Brother Lu can borrow it to take a look?" Leng Shiqi sneered in his heart. Previously, he had put a rubbing of the map in the envelope. Therefore he believed that as long as Go Huarong saw the envelope, he would definitely meet him. Then he took out the old map from his sleeve. However, he didn't give it to Go Huarong. Instead he showed it to him and put it away. Go Huarong's eyes lit up as he looked at the map. Although he only saw it a few times, he could clearly tell that it was real. This was because the map's material, color, age, and ink marks were exactly the same as his own map. He had studied this map for many years. It could be said that the map was so detailed that he could detect the slightest difference. After confirming the map, the smile on Go Huarong's face grew wider. Haha, Brother Lu didn't deceive me. Brother Lu, if you have any conditions, please state them. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, I can give the map to Hall Master Go. First, I want 200 spirit stones and a third-stage spiritual skill. After finding Boiwanhu's tomb, I want to enter it with the Chinko Hall. I want to choose 3 items first. Hearing this, Go Huarong's face sank and he fell into deep thought. Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry. He sat there leisurely and waited. He knew that Go Huarong would definitely agree. The reason was that Go Huarong had always thought that the city lord's mansion had 2 maps. If he wanted to be the first to find Boiwanhu's tomb, he would have to choose to cooperate with Lung Shiqi. Furthermore, the conditions he proposed were not excessive. 200 spirit stones was not a small amount for an ordinary spirit cultivator, but it was nothing for the Chinko Hall that had been in Shangyang City for more than 20 years. Although a third-stage spiritual skill was precious, he did not insist on what type it was. This gave Go Huarong a lot of leeway. As for the last condition, it was an empty promise. Go Huarong would definitely agree. Sure enough, after a short while, Go Huarong said, We'll do as Brother Lu says. Lung Shiqi smiled lightly and said, I believe that Hall Master Go's decision is wise and will not go back on his words. Go Huarong said proudly, Of course. Brother Lu, you can go out and ask around. I, Go Huarong, have established the Chinko Hall for nearly 20 years because of trust. Chapter 157. Over the next few days, a large number of outsiders poured into Shangyang City every day, filling the streets, inns and taverns. The city, which had been in decline for a long time, became lively again. Most of these people came for Boiwanhu's tomb, while a small number came purely to watch the fun. Recently, news about Boiwanhu's tomb had spread all over the place, and it had become a hot topic among the residents. Today, a group of 10 people walked into the Spirit Cultivator commercial street. They were all wearing light blue robes embroidered with green clouds. Look, who are those people? I don't know, but I can tell they're disciples of a Spirit Cultivator sect. They're not people we can mess with. Go stay away. Aren't they from Heavenly Cloud Tower? They're from Heavenly Cloud Tower. Look at the leader. He's one of the deacon elders of Heavenly Cloud Tower, Eugeniu. He's a spirit pulse expert of the 4 realms of Sky Man. The surrounding people were slightly shocked. After all, 99% of the people in this group would never be able to enter the spirit pulse realm in their lives. Their eyes were filled with envy and awe. In the main hall of Chinko Hall, Go Huarong sat on a chair while Shui Wenli paced slowly. From time to time, someone would quietly come in, hand over an envelope and leave. Go Huarong asked, Have you found out about that person? Shui Wenli was stunned after reading the contents of the letter. His face darkened and he paused for a moment before saying, Not yet, but my subordinates reported that people from Heavenly Cloud Tower just entered the city. Heavenly Cloud Tower? Go Huarong was shocked and couldn't sit still. Yes, many people saw them. The leader is the Deacon Elder of Heavenly Cloud Tower, Eugeniu, a Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator. Spirit Pulse Realm. These 3 words exploded in Go Huarong's mind. They didn't even have a Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator in Shangyang City. Now, one had suddenly appeared, and he was the Deacon Elder of a third-rate Spirit Cultivator sect. Needless to say, Eugeniu must be here for Boiwanhu's tomb. Go Huarong asked in a deep voice, Just him? There are 9 other elite disciples of Heavenly Cloud Tower. It's worth mentioning that Ji Gu, one of the 4 spiritual guards who was in charge of protecting Bao Pingy, is also among them. 9. Hearing this, Go Huarong's face turned even uglier. He had already sent out all his gang members to search for clues in the vicinity of Shangyang City according to the map. He had also made some progress, so it could be said that he had a slight advantage. However, so what if he had the upper hand? Not to mention the others, just the 10 people from Heavenly Cloud Tower alone would be enough to turn his Chinko Hall upside down. Although he had a few Spirit Transformation Realm leaders under him, how could those people who came from the wilderness be compared to the sect disciples who had been raised since childhood? What's more, Eugeniu was here. Who could be his opponent? At this time, Shui Wenli said, Hall Master, should we contact Eugeniu? It's too late. Since we were able to get the news, the City Lord's mansion must have known long ago. Although Chu Xen Ran is dead, City Guard Commander Zhong Lin is still alive. He is now in charge of all affairs in Shangyang City and will definitely contact Eugeniu as soon as possible. Go Huarong sighed slightly. But it was Chu Xian Ran who hired assassins to kill Bao Pingyi and the 4 spiritual guards. It's impossible for Heavenly Cloud Tower to cooperate with them. Humph, if you say so, then so be it. Do you have any evidence? Isn't that Ji Gu one of the 4 spiritual guards? He is the evidence. You underestimate Chu Xian Ran too much. Ji Gu must have secretly relied on the City Lord's mansion to survive until now. With him as the middleman, they will work together. What should we do? Shui Wenli was also a little anxious. Go Huarong had experienced great storms and waves, so he quickly calmed down and said, "Don't worry, since the tomb of Buyuanho can attract Heavenly Cloud Tower, it can naturally attract other spirit cultivator sections. Send more brothers to watch the various city gates at all times. Once you find a spirit cultivator sect entering the city, you must inform me as soon as possible. We also need to find strong reinforcements." Hall Master is wise. By the way, what should we do with that old man surnamed Lu? Humph, he's just an idiot. He actually handed over the map so easily. I originally planned to kill him directly. Let's keep him first. When we find the tomb of Buyuanho, we'll bring him in. He's at least a spirit transformation realm cultivator. When we get the tomb, humph. Go Huarong's eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke. Shui Wenli immediately complimented, "Hall Master is far-sighted. This subordinate admires you." However, the two of them would never have dreamed that Leng Shiqi was actually right below where they were talking. Furthermore, he had listened to every single word of their conversation without missing a single word. Before Leng Shiqi came to Chinko Hall, he had stored a lot of dry food and water in his mustard seed bag. After reaching an agreement with Go Huarong, he pretended to leave, but in fact he sneaked back underground. He had 2 purposes. First, he could know all the information at any time. Second, he wanted to see what kind of face Go Huarong had. Today he saw that he was not a good person. The reason Leng Shiqi had directly given the map to Chinko Hall was because it was useless to him. Chinko Hall had a lot of people. With 2 maps, it wouldn't take long for them to find the tomb of Buyuanho. He also hoped that the tomb would appear soon. It would be best if it appeared within half a month. That way he could go back and take over the mission to assassinate Bao Pingyi. However, the appearance of Heavenly Cloud Pavilion also surprised him. Buyuanho was indeed a very great person in the folklore, but in the end he was just a marquis with no real power and lived in a small city. Such a person was really nothing to a spirit cultivation sect. For example, if the Heavenly Cloud Pavilion's master and head elder joined the Thunderfire dynasty, they could easily get the title of marquis. The appearance of Heavenly Cloud Pavilion worried Leng Shiqi the most. He was afraid that his identity would be exposed. When he assassinated Bao Pingyi, he used the identity of the old man surnamed Lu. His appearance was also the same. This definitely could not escape Ji Gu's eyes. Once he dared to show up with this identity, Ji Gu would definitely recognize him. At that time, he would not have the confidence to resist the encirclement of a Spirit Pulse Realm expert and 9 Spirit Transformation Realm cultivators. It seems that it is necessary to deal with this hidden danger, Ji Gu. Leng Shiqi coldly muttered to himself, then left Chinko Hall. When night fell, Leng Shiqi touched the vicinity of the City Lord's mansion. Then, the veins at the corner of his eyes bulged and he opened his eyes. In his vision, the world suddenly turned black and white. He carefully looked at everyone in the City Lord's mansion, as well as their spirit aura. Not long after, he locked onto a familiar aura. It was one of the 4 spirit guards, Ji Gu. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.